Most bank robbers get caught because they panic, but Stephen Meyers and his partner Hollywood treated robbery like an art form. Deep in the forests of Washington, outside of Seattle, inside a massive treehouse hidden from the world, they built something that felt untouchable. A secret kingdom fueled by millions of dollars, 18 successful bank robberies in a row, a treehouse full of disguises, police scanners, and absolute paranoia. But according to Steve, there was something else surrounding all of it. Something divine, premonitions, strange feelings, precognitive dreams, warnings. He even said that he felt that his partner was being haunted by demons. There was almost a supernatural sense to everything, that the walls were closing in. Well, in this episode, Stephen Meyers reveals the unbelievable true story behind one of the most sophisticated bank robbery crews in American history, and how they outsmarted the FBI for years, lived like ghosts in the woods, and why he believes that fate was always waiting for them in the end. So if you are interested in crime stories and finding out what took down one of the most successful bank robbery operations in American history and the strange spiritual side of all of it, well, this is the episode for you. So sit back, relax, and welcome to camp. Stephen Mayer, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. This is really exciting. I watched the Netflix doc that features you, and the story that kind of has unraveled around your life, and kind of also was the documentary that was inspired very much by your book Treehouse. That's behind me. I mean, this story has everything. Truly, you've lived a fascinating life that I don't know if there's many people on this planet, certainly not many people that have sat in this tent that could say that they've experienced. I mean, going from being like a sculptor, a refined artist traveling Europe, to then, being involved in a drug organization, or maybe a drug scheme, perhaps. I'll let you elaborate.
More of that, yes.
And then a full-on bank robbery operation. I mean, 19 bank robberies total? I mean, accumulating millions of dollars in cash, and ultimately how it all went down and what the aftermath of that was truly fascinating. But I just want to begin, I guess, before we give away too much. Where did you grow up originally?
I grew up in Kansas City.
Okay.
Grew up and lived there through high school. Then I left for the East Coast, D.C., and went to college there for a few years, and then went to Europe.
And then you were
there
working as a sculptor and as an artist.
Well, not then. I mean, I was actually a musician back in D.C. when I was jazz flutist and flautist. Mm-hmm. And when I went to Europe, then I started studying in a college in England. Started doing sculpture and architectural, study on architecture and so forth like that. And then from there, I went to Germany and did a 3-year apprenticeship in furniture making and design with an architectural firm there. And then from there, I went to, I got a visa to go to Norway to restore some mountain architecture, old post and beam type Norwegian architecture. And I was up there, I opened a studio in Oslo. And I was there for a number of years, 4 years. And then I moved to Italy, and that's where I ended up living in Italy, sculpting down there.
For how long in Italy?
I think about 5-6 years, something like that. And then I moved back to the States, and I kept my studio in Italy and would go back and forth. And then finally I cut it loose at a certain point and stayed in the States.
Now, how old are you roughly when you moved back to the States after the stint in Europe?
I moved back in 1980, so I would have been 30 years old, 31, something like that.
So up until this point, from 0 to 30, you're a boy from Kansas City, you're interested in jazz, you're a musician, you're reading the classics, you're well-read, you go to college, become a sculptor, open an art studio. I mean, you are, at this point, it seems like on the surface, not involved in any type of criminality. Is that fair to say?
I would say, no, in actuality, I have so many subplots of things that went on when we were in college, things we did that I've always escaped law, but I've always been unfolding with the law, if that makes sense. I mean, we did all kinds of things, but no, once I got into college, nothing like that ever took place. I was always, but before that, probably, in high school, and
sure.
It was just, we were wild kids. It was a time in life that, I mean, I've always been on the edge my whole life. So whether it was the art world or whatever it was, I was always on the edge. I never, uh, I never looked for security. I always, if I wanted something, I would go to it. I mean, when I studied in Germany, before I went there and I started traveling all over Germany, Austria, Switzerland, looking for a place I could get an apprenticeship with, visiting all these places before I even spoke German. And, I was just like, life was wide open. I mean, it was like Hermann Hesse, when you read Hermann Hesse's works and, Dostoevsky, and you read these giants and you see their life and the things they go through. It was wide open. But of course, it was a different time. It's not like it is today. I mean, it was a lot easier to do that. I mean, $100 had some meaning back then.
Right.
It doesn't anymore.
Right. Were you inspired at all by like the beatnik, sort of like New York poetry guys?
Not then, no. I mean, I like Bob Dylan, obviously. I mean, he was that period of time when I was in D.C. studying, he was there. He would show up in Georgetown and some of the clubs there, coffee houses.
Wow.
I would go there, Joan Baez and all that. But the beat thing, I wasn't, I was more into the French poetry. Rimbaud, Baudelaire, all of that. And that was more my, the symbolism and imagery and so forth.
Right.
And
so at this point, you moved back to the United States. And where do you land?
When I came back from Italy, strange subtext here, subtitle is our house blew up in Italy, in the village that we lived in. And it was a gas explosion.
And who all was living there?
Well, there was other families. We were renting the place, but it was an old, 500-year-old place, and no one got hurt, fortunately. But my family, when I was still married, my daughter was 2 years old, 2 or 3, something like that. And, we lived in my studio, which was in the town from the mountain village we lived in. So we lived there for about a year, I guess, before we moved back to the States. And because it was just, situation was untenable at that point,
Right.
Yeah.
And then you end up on the West Coast.
No, I ended up in D.C. Went back to D.C., to Virginia, Northern Virginia. And then I got a place there set up my studio there, and, my daughter was growing and, lived there for a number of years and had my studio. It was showing in D.C., New York. I used to come to New York quite a bit. I had a number of shows up here. And, but it's been 40 years. This is like 40, 45 years since I've been here.
Really?
Back in the 80s, I was showing in New York. Yeah, quite a
bit.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Soho. Yeah.
A lot's changed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't been to Manhattan yet. I don't have time, but, right now, I mean, I'm here in Brooklyn, but yeah, it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. It's
get the energy back.
Yeah. It's, because North Carolina, I'm there. My daughter lives there. There's situations while I'm there, but it's not my kind of livelihood. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the focal point of the documentary on Netflix, How to Rob a Bank, is centered around this guy, Scot.
Correct.
Who's known to the authorities during the time of this sort of bank robbery spree as Hollywood. How do you meet him for the first time?
Well, we met years before bank robberies ever took place. My brother actually was the one, when I was living in D.C., I remember the day, actually, I was in my studio in Northern Virginia, and I was working. He came in, he said, would you like to fly out to Seattle and renovate this barn we have out in the countryside, south of Olympia? And I go, yeah. And he says, well, Scot's working on a laboratory up there for crystal meth. And at that time, I had really no idea, I mean, cocaine was the thing during that period of time, during the 80s, the whole Miami thing and all that. And so, yeah, I said, yeah, sure. I mean, it didn't mean anything to me, doing. So I flew out there and I started, building on the barn, it was sort of a front for his laboratory. It was a huge old, American barn, one of those big old, huge barns.
So your brother had the relationship before you did?
Yeah, they were friends in high school, you know what I mean? So they were like friends. I really never knew Scot then, but it was through this event that I finally met him. And when we went out there, and we met each other and I started working, and then we just clicked. I don't know. Scot is a very analytical, very professional in his mind. He's wild and loose, friendly, but when he does work, his work is meticulous, and he doesn't like anything. He doesn't want people around him that will compromise this or that. I mean, the product he made was, if you know Breaking Bad, he was long before Breaking Bad ever happened.
The original Heisenberg.
He was the Heisenberg that, if you think Heisenberg was fanatic, Scott Scurlock was fanatic. And his product was just wonderful. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I mean,
you tried it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially during work sessions, it's just such a thing. And then as long as you are smart about it, I mean, if you go crazy, but, some people can tolerate. For example, I very rarely did marijuana. I hated the stuff. It messed my whole body up, whereas somehow it affected me in a way that I just couldn't bear it. And whereas this was, what I did when I did it was, very nice, inspiring, productive, very productive, it was...
Right. Which I wouldn't encourage anyone to try, man.
Oh,
but
I mean,
at the same time, I hope people are not judging you when they hear this, because it's like, I've taken Adderall, which is, I think, chemically the same thing. I don't know exactly how different it could be.
Yeah, it's all of that. It's an upper thing.
All my friends in college are taking Adderall and Vyvanse nonstop. And if you've taken these things, you can probably relate to this experience of like, I was able to write 3 papers that were due before the next day, and I worked all the way through the night, and I had great ideas, and I was confident, and I felt good. And so that's kind of the feeling of working on this barn with, your buddy, and you're out in the nature, and you're getting a tan, and moving
all of that. And, we're camping out. It was summertime. But, when I was in the laboratory, you're talking about this massive barn, and he's got flask and burners going. And I don't even remember all the glassware name. It was just like a huge thing. And, you got to be on there 24/7. It's about a 2.5, 3 week process, between beginning to end. And, so you got to have schedules, one on one, sleep, do that and all that. And, it was fascinating for me. I didn't realize the implications legally. If we'd have been caught, we'd still be in prison.
Right. So, but at the time when your brother's like, hey, by the way, you want to work on this barn? It is a front for a lab. And also, you might have to work on the lab a little bit.
No, he never asked me that. He just said front. But only when I got there did Scott and I, he started explaining. I started looking at it, I questioned, and then we just clicked. It was like immediate. And because my brother is not that type of personality, he's more, I don't know, he couldn't do what needed to be done in a disciplined way with the laboratory. And so he and I did, that's when we first met. That's when we got really connected.
And at that point, you didn't have any aversion to the criminal element. You weren't.
I didn't even realize. I was naive to it. It didn't really enter my mind. He would mention that. He says, "Don't ever talk about laboratories. Don't ever make words like that. Don't ever speak. This kind of stuff." He would tell me, you can get this amount of many years for it, and so on and so forth. And I was in the art world. What did it mean to me? You know what I mean? I mean, you saw Miami Vice. That was about the closest I got to anything. Watching those movies, you know what I mean? It was a drug, but it was so isolated from that world, from that drug world, the East Coast, New York, Miami thing. It just seems so. What are you going to do? I mean, it's out in nowhere, it's not, but he was aware of the legal implications and all of that. Yeah.
And at this point, does he have the treehouse?
Oh yeah, it's there. He'd begun the treehouse long before.
Could you Google this, Christos? But how do you pronounce his last name? Scurlock?
Scurlock.
Yeah. So Scott.
Scurlock.
So Scott Scurlock Treehouse. And if you haven't seen the Netflix documentary, it's truly fascinating. The amount of footage that exists within this place. I mean, specifically in this time, it just feels like innocent and fun and kind of avant-garde and kind of like bohemian in a way. It's like these hippies out in the forest, like running around naked, doing drugs, hanging, in a treehouse.
There it is. Yeah. That's what it was, It was,
if you have other photos of the treehouse, it'd be awesome to see just like it's a 4-story 70-foot tall complex.
The first level, when you go up the staircase, I don't think the staircase was built here at this time. He was still using ladders. I built a staircase for him, a 3-tier staircase. And, but then it goes all the way to the tops of the trees. He just kept building. It morphed over years. It wasn't he didn't get down on, design it on paper. He just built it amorphically. You know? I mean, it grew.
I mean, this is like a young boy's dream.
Yeah.
Is like to build a treehouse with your buddies and live in it with everyone.
You want to know why he built it? I asked him, I said, whatever inspired you to build this thing? And he had a 20 acre property. And in the very front of the property on the road was a little cottage, a little rundown cottage. And there you go. And he had rented, he was renting that when he was at Evergreen College. And this was before he started his crystal melting. That's actually where he started doing it. Crystal melting was in the college. He'd sneak in at nighttime, break into the college and do one night things. That's where he learned it. And that's where he experimented from it. Yeah, in the college itself. Well, I asked him, I said, well, why did you ever do this? He said, because Evergreen is a very liberal, free, everything. And he says, because I can fuck all the women I want. When they know I got a treehouse, they come running here. He says, I had more women coming here from Evergreen College and all over once they knew it was there. That's the reason he built it.
Wow.
Initially started that way.
Wow. So he would like go and be at a party and be like, yeah, I actually live up in this giant treehouse.
Oh, yeah,
and I'm sure people tell stories like, oh, Scott has a treehouse. And girls would be like, well, I want to go see. And then, you leave a party and they go check it out and you have a couple drinks on the, balcony and you're overlooking Mount Rainier and all of a sudden one thing leads to another.
I mean, when I first saw it, this was when I came from the barn down in south of Olympia. It was not to this level here yet. And that was the first time I saw it. And I remember I came in at nighttime and I went through the forest and it was very hard, very dark. And you come into this small clearing around and you see this lights up there and you look up and you go, oh my God, you know what I mean? And I was just like, it was amazing to me.
Right.
I mean, it was more, not from a, it's beautiful because it's organic, not because it's designed well.
Right.
Or even built well.
But just that it's like a true soul expression.
Phenomena that somebody could actually do it.
Right.
And the picture, you can't realize it, but it's really, I mean, we would sometimes be hanging from ropes to be able to support structures from underneath because of a storm or something. We'd have to re-support it. And I mean, we did crazy stuff. You just think, I look back now and I go, I don't know what in your mind, but I
can tell you how.
But that period of time was so different than it is today. It's not.
No phones, no Google, just guys carrying wood and hammering it in.
That was what it was, and, you go get materials and, construction sites would, they always have their big refuge of materials and we would get it and they would let us take it. And, of course we bought stuff, we spent thousands and thousands of dollars on wood and construction and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Now, Scott, to buy a property like this and then obviously all the raw materials and windows and things like that, where's this money coming from?
Well, during that period of time, it was his crystal was when it, he was, like I said, he was renting.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I finally came out there from Chicago, he had purchased the property. And when I came from Chicago to actually help him with the whole process of starting with the bank robbery, my thing was to remodel the front cottage. And I filled all the paperwork out and refinanced the place for him. And he got money to refinance from the refinancing. And we bought materials with that money. It's all very...
Yeah.
It's all very worked out. He used the bank money that he robbed banks from.
Hilarious. Yeah.
So poetical.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got maybe $40,000 or $50,000 extra, and then we bought a lot of materials for the house to redo it when we needed, and also the treehouse, which they didn't know the difference. But.
Right. Now, how is the drug operation working? Because this guy, I mean, Scott, but it seems like he's sort of like this kind of hippie free spirit, but like a smart, sharp, nice enough guy. So how is he actually funneling these drugs from his lab to customers?
One man, his connection. And this man was an ex-biker, and he lived in Olympia, and he was retired from it, but he had all the connections from Washington down to Southern California, and he distributed everything. They never socialized together. They only met. They would meet up in the mountains in Olympia, the Olympic Mountains. He would drive his old pickup truck. Scott had an old pickup truck. The other guy had an old pickup truck, and they would have chainsaws and wood piled in the back. And then in the wood, he would have 180 pounds of crystal that he just went through a session of, laboratory session with. and he would deliver it to this man, and then within a month, the man would come back with whatever, $1 million, $2 million, whatever the value of all that product was.
Wow.
And they would meet up in the woods, and that was their connection. And back then, you had payphones on the street, so everybody, Scott and I even did. We never called on our own phone. We always have a payphone. I had one in New Orleans and San Francisco, and he had that number, and I had his payphone number wherever it was in Olympia or Seattle. And we had arranged days we would call each other at certain time. And we would talk on the payphone for any updates or when I would be traveling up there or whatever news, but we would never call on our phone. We'd never show any kind of communication that we were, you know what I mean? Because it was already strong enough connection when I would be up there. People knew that I was there. And I had lived there for a little over a year when I was building on his house, you know, before I moved away. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now at this point, he's making, I mean, a couple million a year doing this? I mean, how much money is he making in the drug game?
I mean, I never got quantified it because it was not my business. But, you know, when I was helping him on the laboratories, he would always pay me $100,000 or something like that. You know what I mean?
$100,000.
So, yeah, he would.
And that was for you just to kind of help out on the side.
Just to help him, yeah.
So for him, I mean,
he was getting millions. I arrived from Chicago one time. This is before I moved out there. I took a trip in the summer. I arrived. This is when he was married. He was married to a rich Jewish woman from North Chicago, which he had no idea what kind of culture he was jumping into. But she was a hot, nice, you know, really good looking woman. I liked her a lot. She was a nice woman. And I come in and I told him I was arriving, you know, he knew I was coming, but he didn't know when or what. And I arrived there and nobody was up in the front house. And so I walked back through the forest and then the treehouse, and I went up to the treehouse and opened the door, and they're both there nude with stacks of millions of dollars on the table, counting them out. And she's there nude. And she says, "Oh, come on in." You know, I'll tell you what, I'll come back later. You guys take care of yourself. I'll be back in a minute. I got to go. But, you know, it was, yeah, you know, what can I say? I mean, this is like some fantasy story, but this was real. They only were married for a year, and then he realized it was...
That wasn't for him.
Well,
he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that wants to be in a committed long-term relationship.
No, he can't, because his world was too critical for a woman like that. And then, you know, she came from a lifestyle, and he was not, you know, her acquaintance and family, they're cultured, they dress up nice. He would go to a good restaurant and have cut off jeans or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
He wasn't a hippie, but he was an outlaw. He just didn't give a shit if school kept or not.
Right. He didn't like authority. He didn't like any of this.
He liked authority on a professional level.
Like he was respectful.
Oh, yeah. He really loved, I mean, the FBI, CIA, Mossad, all of these, he studied them meticulously. He studied case files of the FBI on bank robberies specifically. And this is one of his reasons why he was so good, because he knew what worked and what didn't work. He was very analytical and very fanatic about leaving forensic evidence, either for them or keep it from them, you know.
What were some of the craziest parties happening in this treehouse? Were there ever just full-on wild nights?
I mean, maybe before I got there, but I don't think so. You see, you had a lot of the local people, you know, that would love to come and, you know, but he was kind of, the deeper he got into things, the more reclusive he became. And that's one of the reasons he wanted me there as well, because when I moved from Chicago out there, I was in the front house. I was living there as we were building that. But it was also to keep people from coming in just arbitrarily all the time.
You had to build a gate at one point just to keep people out?
Yeah, I built a huge gate up in the front, and, you know, they would come and they would have to knock on my door, and I say, "Well, no, he's not here," or whatever I would say. "No, we can't do that." And little by little, they realized I was kind of like an opponent, you know, and so it was no longer just come in and free, you know.
Everyone have fun.
So little by little, especially with bank robberies, he didn't want people hanging out anymore, you know, except the people who knew what we were doing, you know, who were indirectly or directly involved, you know what I mean?
Now, the story could end here, right? He could just go on to be, you know, a pretty notorious drug manufacturer and maybe get out of the game, or maybe that blows up in his face and that's what it is. But eventually he gets out of the drug game.
Well, the reason why was very simple. He was in, I think it was Africa. I was there. I was there in Olympia for some reason. I can't remember. And this was before the bank robbery. And the guy he dealt with was murdered in Olympia. some biker because they, knew he had money or whatever. And although they didn't get anything, but they murdered him. And when Scott found out about that, he said he's done. He doesn't want anything more to do with drug. He never liked that world. That's why he never had to deal in it.
Mm-hmm.
He just liked the chemistry. He loved the creation of what he did, and obviously the money, but he didn't like the culture. He didn't like that world. And so when he left, he didn't want to have anything more to do with it. And that's when he decided he had spoken to me. He said he's always fantasized about robbing banks, even as a kid. And, I did too. Like you see, that would be cool. You know what I mean? I mean, it was like, you know what I mean? It's just sort of like, but it was a fantasy. Whereas he took it seriously, and that's when he realized that's what he's going to do.
Now, at this point, like you hear stories about people that are, high up, drug kingpins, and they live this lavish lifestyle, and they'll buy, like all these Italian mobsters, and they got all these jewels, and they have cars and all this stuff. It didn't seem like that's what he was doing. Was he using this money in any way for himself? Like leisurely
travel. He traveled.
He was just traveling.
He just traveled and loved. And I mean, he wasn't a Robin Hood or anything as cliche as that, but no, one of his main fanatic thing was he drove around a 1989 van, and he says, I don't want to have a new car because if I ever get investigated on suspicion of anything, they're going to see where do I get this money? Where do I get the money for this van? Where do I get? And so what he would do, he lived off credit cards. He was always in debt. And he had one of his ex-girlfriends was from Switzerland, and she worked in the Swiss bank in Basel. And he would send all of the money to her. He had an account there, send his money to her, and she'd put it into his account. And then when he would run up the credit cards, which we would always use for preparation of a bank robbery, if he ever was investigated, they suspected him for something, they would look, this guy's got debt up to his head. He's got an old, he's got a mortgage that he can barely pay. And he's got an old car. This guy's not a bank robber. You know what I mean? And then once he robbed a bank, he would have her pay it all off. And,
wow.
You know what I mean? And then start it up again, live off the credit cards. And he said, if I ever get killed or get whatever, if it all falls apart, I'll rob them twice.
Now, I just don't get, like, he's a smart guy. He's sharp. You're sharp as well. At this point, all that money could just get invested into the Swiss, bank account and go into the market, and he had millions of dollars, and he has no expenses at all. And he could keep on traveling, make an interest on his investments, and just live the rest of his life. He never touches the principal.
It was never the money. It was never, he hated the concept of hoarding. He never liked hoarding. It was just something I even questioned that too. I mean, I had, my money too, but back then investing was a different concept from what it is today, in a sense. I don't know how to explain it. Money was much more valuable then. And when, if I were to sell a sculpture for $2,000 or $3,000 was a lot of money back then.
Right.
I mean, in my world, not
it's
a lot
a good chunk of money now, but especially in the 80s, 90s.
Today it's hardly anything. I mean, to me, it's not, you know what I mean? But back then it was. But his was the hoarding. He just wanted to live. And the concept of manufacturing or robbing banks, it was the fact of not because you could make a lot of money and you could show yourself as some big kingpin or some big this. It was because you could show yourself you could do it. We did it. I can do this. And people ask me, why did you do it? As I said, because we can do it. I mean, if two people like us, he goes to the library, forensic library, FBI forensic library, studies case files, gets an idea. His main, illumination came when he saw, I think it was Doubtfire, where she had the mask on. And he said, that's the clue. You can't go on with ski masks. You can't go in you've got to look like a real person going in, but they don't know who you are.
Wow.
And that's what that's what crystallized in him. This is how you have to do it.
Wow.
And
that's interesting. It's just I don't know. I think so many people, they look at, any type of crime, like specifically high ranking crime, they're like, oh, you do this to get money. But for him and for you by proxy, it was really about the thrill of doing something new and interesting and getting away with it, I guess.
It was, it was a very, very creative thing. I mean, for me, because it was so foreign to my world, but I was always, even in Europe, in the art world, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be critical here, but the art world's a criminal world too. I mean, it's a laundry world, especially during the 80s.
Right.
I mean, it was between real estate and artworks, it was drug money laundering is all it was. And there's a lot of crime in it. I mean, of all of the shows I've had, I could probably say out of 20, maybe 3, 4 were, not some kind of problem going on with the gallery owners or this. It's just such a waste of time after a while. I mean, unless you're one of the chosen that gets up, and I'm not saying I'm that great to be one of the chosen, but it's a political game as well. And
right. And for anyone that doesn't know, and I'm not even an expert, but maybe you can expound on this, but the fine art world, you have a contingent at the very least where you have people that are operating in the gray areas of economics, and perhaps they have a drug empire or some other type of criminal empire where they have all this dirty money that can get traced back to them and from their operations, or at the very least get investigated. But if they put $500,000 into a painting, and then all of a sudden they have that painting and they keep it for a year, and then they sell it for $400,000 or maybe $600,000, it's a marginal gain or loss, but for them, they've now cleaned the money through this artwork sale. Is that more or less how it works?
It's kind of like that. It's also, if you have a new artist that's not known yet, you'll have a gallery that wants it, and then you'll have their friend who will pay $100,000 for it, and then they'll put it to the auction saying, well, it was sold for $100,000. The auctioneer has it selling it for whatever, $200. Now the original gallery owner goes and has a new price on the, it kind of is it's a game they play between one another.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, except for the fact of maybe, classical art, antiquities and stuff like that. That's another market value. But new contemporary artists, I mean, you have to build their market.
Mm-hmm.
And to build it, you just don't put a price tag on it and say, this is what it's worth. Nobody's going to believe it. So auctioning off artwork. So if you're a gallery owner and I'm a gallery owner, I have a new artist, you buy this for $100,000 and then you take it to the auction house and sell it. I get you the money back. It's a strange operation that takes place. I'm not saying that's everything, but
of course,
it's
an element
during that time. And then you have drug money, and a lot of these, a lot of the galleries were, they were run by not the housewife, but the wife of a very wealthy guy, and it's a kind of a tax write-off whether they make money or not. And, they sell, they don't sell, and it's a cultural thing. It's a kind of
high society
kind of
thing.
And, I mean, I'm not that way. I did it. I played the game. I did it. And,
you saw it up close, but you're a boy from Kansas City.
Yeah. I never have a show. I never exhibited there, actually.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah, everywhere else, but not there.
Now, before jumping into the actual bank robbery operations, you told me that there was a formula that was used by Scot in making this product. Where did he get the formula from?
That's a good question, but it was Adolf Hitler's formula for crystal, what he gave to his fighter pilots. And he found that when he was studying at Evergreen College. This is what he told me. I mean, I go, you got to be crazy. I said, really? How did you get it? I can't remember how he got it, but I'm sure it's documented. I mean, but you have to be able to
synthesize and understand the chemistry to do it.
You got to know the chemistry to be able to, make it work. And I'm sure it's easy to Google now if you wanted, but still you have to do it. And that, I don't know, but back then you got to understand the degree. Today you have these people creating this garbage that they create. They go and buy Sudafed, and they have 150 people that go buy Sudafed for them, and they smash up the Sudafed and take it through a boiling process or whatever it is they do to get the ephedrine out of it. Well, as back then, he had people who would go to pharmaceutical outlets, distributors that sell to pharmaceutical companies, the actual raw product. He would get ephedrine, pure ephedrine from China, from the pharmaceutical. And this was a clandestine operation he had to do because he knew that feds would follow these people who purchased stuff, but he had some kind of layered scheme that he would have. He would pay somebody, I think, $50,000 to go purchase the stuff that he had ordered, and everything was backdoor. Everything was fake names, fake ID, all this stuff to be able to get you can't get that. You can't go to a pharmaceutical and do that today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like going and trying to buy explosives. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Whereas back then you could, but then that was part of one of the problems he had. It got more and more difficult to buy the pure ingredients. That was also one of his, because he would never do what they do today. He would never mess around with that shit.
Right.
Whereas in Mexico, I guess they're manufacturing this stuff, and they have the direct line from China, so they probably, because evidently the ephedrine comes from a plant that's in China, from
Right.
what I understand. Yeah.
And I've heard that they're not some of these like Chinese corporations are not too concerned about funneling drugs potentially into the West, and that they're.
Well, I wouldn't imagine they would make a lot of money, but I mean, the actual pharmaceutical outlets that sell this stuff. There was one huge one in Chicago that he did surveillance on when he came to visit me, and he wanted to try to get one of the employees to be able to go in there and actually rob the place.
Wow.
Take it over, at nighttime, go in and get the ephedrine. You know what I mean? I don't know. I can't remember. It's in my mind. It's a little vague, but he knew the difficulty was coming, this was before his partner got killed, so he was still looking into the future of how he was going to do that, because he could see it was clamping down.
So he gets out of the drug game completely, and Scott says, you know what? Let's take up a new hustle. When does he come to you and say, I think we're going to rob a bank?
No, he came to me in Chicago. He arrived, it was this summer day, and I was working in my studio, and he came in and all happy. He loved Chicago because it was just party. Whenever he come into town, it was like party for him, the cities. And so we ended up going down to this Italian restaurant he liked a lot. I'd taken him there before, and we were there, and he starts telling me about his first bank robbery, which he did with Mark Biggins and Mark Biggins' girlfriend. And because he wanted to try it, and they were there, and, but the whole thing was a boondoggle. It was just a complete, they were lucky they didn't get caught.
Yeah. The documentary does a good job kind of explaining the tale, where it's like, okay, you come in with me, Mark, and then you control the room. And then Mark's like, everyone get down. And then Scott's like, everyone stand up, because he doesn't want people laying down. And then the whole thing goes off the rails. They go to a car. It's not the right car. They run across a golf course. They try to find the new spot. They get in the car and they drive away.
Yeah. Finally, the girl, she messed up. She was supposed to be at the first rendezvous point. She wasn't there. She was at the second rendezvous. So they had to run to get to her and everything. Anyway, he realized that.
But it worked. And he made $20,000.
He made whatever he made. It worked. And, he realized that, but he realized that he can't do this with these people. At first, Mark was not the type for it. Mark's girlfriend, Bethany, she loved it. I mean, she was, she loved it. Scott said, man, she would be a great Bonnie. You know what I mean? She loved it. Whereas Mark was just, he says, this is not me. I can't do this. I can't do this. Poor guy.
So when he's telling you this over, a pasta sauce,
I'm just shaking my head. I'm saying, what the fuck? I said, how much did you make? And he said, what was it? 28,000?
Something like that.
And I go, you did all that for that kind of money after what life you've been living? He says, it's not that. It says, that's just the beginning. I got a lot to learn, and I got a lot, but man, there's millions in this, and I love it. And it was the suspense. It was the action. I mean, the action in a sense, we never approached it crazy, like with adrenaline. We never had, before an operation, before a bank takedown, 2 weeks throughout our whole surveillance period and everything, planning, we never drank, none of that. We were just very sober. It was very analytical, very programmed, and we didn't want to have a mistake made because of drinking or because you were on marijuana, some stupid stuff, that you could blame. So that was our thing, but he just loved the dynamic, energy that, the success, to be able to beat them at what they do, at what they think they protect when they don't. And he didn't like banks, and he didn't like insurance companies. He didn't like them as in principle. He didn't like them. Not like he was, want to go blow them up or any stupid thing like that. But when you go after the system in a way that is nonviolent and you use their methodology against them, that is more compromising and more dangerous to the system than as if you go in with guns, raging and crazy, all of that. That's like Hollywood cliche. And they want that to happen, because then they can have the, FBI and police and everybody can go in and finally capture you, which they will do. Either dead or alive, you're going to get captured. And then they become the heroes, which, they are in the eyes of, everyday Americans. But when you do it, what they do themselves better than they do it,
That's a problem.
That's a real problem.
Yeah.
And they don't like it. And that to them, they were very vindictive with us, which I can understand.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But when he tells you this, does he immediately invite you in? Are you a little apprehensive at first, or are you just like, all right?
No, I was having my property up for sale in Chicago, and I was thinking of leaving. And I'd been out to the Treehouse, out doing what we did before, and then he offered me to build the front place, move everything out there. And, it was a whole studio. I had marble, I had everything. And, for me to have a place with all the materials and machines and tools and, sculptures, and took 2 truckloads for me to drive in, back and forth. And, his property has a huge barn, and I could store stuff I had, it takes something for me to make a move. And I said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And he said, but the main reason was he wanted me to sculpt his prosthetics, sculpt his facial prosthetic components. And he wanted me to do it really well, because it's about a 3-week process to do it properly, back then, with the latex prosthetics and everything. And so, you have to cast his face, then you got to cast that, and then you got to sculpt it, and then you got to recast that. And then, then you got to have multiple, he had in his studio, in his makeup studio, he'd have multiple noses and chins and cheeks and different components that we use, and then, the first wig I made for him was just one of those cheap wigs you get. And I said, man, that's got, we can't use that. So I went and bought 3 or 4 different real hair women's wigs. And then we, cut them and sculpted them for his head, different looks for him at different times and stuff like that. So
now, was he asking you to be an accomplice in the actual operations, or was he just asking you like, hey, make me some disguises, and then it progressed?
It started as disguises in Chicago and, building the place. But he also, when I got out there, he explained to me that, a person that was going to work with him, whom he never, it didn't work out. And I never knew who it was. I kind of had my ideas, but it was never a problem. And he wanted me to, with a role that was running the scanners and running the radio communication between him.
When you say the scanners, you mean police scanners?
Yes, police scanners.
To listen in on their frequency to see where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, for any call that comes out of a bank robbery. And, then the communication we had together while he's in the bank with our Motorola's, our 2-way radios. And, in the beginning, it was a non-compromising thing. And like I said, we were friends. And so I knew he was going to do this. And, you kind of think morally. I didn't think morally of this. I thought more risk level.
Right. What's going to happen to me?
Yeah. Do I want to do this for, this kind of thing? But then at the same time, I don't know how to explain it. It was like this aura that came about. And especially when you're on the property, around the treehouse and around this whole, it's a sanctuary. The place is a sanctuary. It's a entity or a world outside of the world.
You feel invincible.
Yeah, you
like feel
protected.
Kingdom.
Yeah, it's a protection. It's something that's there. You're in it, and then when you leave, you go into the other world, and you deal with what you deal with, whether it's party, whether it's a restaurant, whatever it is, and then you come back to it, and you're in this womb, kind of like secure womb. And the treehouse created that ambient.
Right.
But the first robbery I did, which it's detailed in the book, you kind of hear our dialogue when he actually approaches me in the treehouse. And I said, yeah, okay, let's do it. You know what I mean? And it was a non-compromising thing for me. It was not a risk. And it worked. It was.
Why is it not a risk? What do you mean?
As far as me getting caught, it was the way we had it worked out. If he were to get caught, we were separated. I had a vehicle. I actually was in his van at the time. And, he was in another vehicle. And if he were ever to get caught, I would just return to the place. And, I was there. And at that time, I had my Achilles tendon got cut and I was on a crutch. And so that was kind of like, who would be robbing a bank with a crutch? And, the circumstances are just, you're not doing that. And plus my background, who I am, I'm not, do you see what I mean? There's no risk.
I see. So if the police came and investigated you, let's say he gets jammed up and you go up to the treehouse and they show up and they go, hey, your friend that built this treehouse, he's, in prison for robbery. You'd be like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
He never did that to me. I never saw this. And then you'd have a case to get out.
Yeah, I mean, they would never look at anything. There would be no, my background at that point, it was the first one I was around and I was there. There's too much residual evidence of me moving and everything else, that would never come to that.
Right.
And of course it didn't. And then when one thing happened after the other, this thing would, built up and built up. And in the beginning, you have to understand, I was learning as I was going, just like in the laboratories, I was learning and I became very analytical to it. I became very focused. And with this, I said, listen, I'm not going to be doing this, Scott, for you or me with this Mickey Mouse 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, no more. We got to go for the vaults. It's the vault. It's hundreds, it's millions, or I don't want to do it. I'm not going to, it's more embarrassing than anything else. If I were to get caught, it's just embarrassing to me to think I got caught on some stupid, you know what I mean? It's just spend however many years. I didn't know what the law was, but it didn't sound good. Even if it was a year, a day didn't sound good to me.
Right. So if anyone doesn't know, you obviously go into a bank and you have the bank tellers that have a certain amount of money behind the register, basically. And then in the vault is where the actual money is.
That's where the real bank is. Yeah.
Millions of dollars.
Depending on the day, and we had to learn as we went. There's no school of bank robbery, so you learn as you go, and you learn what you should do, and mistakes help you because you learn what not to do after a mistake, and you refine it, and there's many tiers of what you do. The vehicles we would buy, I would go look for vehicles on the open market. They, those little books they have in the cities, for people who sell their own cars from their house. I would go look at it, and if there's one that I would find that I liked, then I would say, well, I'll be back. I'll see. I got to go look at a couple more cars, and I'll let you know if I want to buy it. And if I wanted it, I would go and I'd hire somebody from a bar or something. I say, here's $1,000. Can you go buy this car for me? And they would go buy the car. It would look like either a woman or somebody that didn't look anything like us. And give them $1,000 to go buy the car. And I said, just go up there, buy it, and bring it back to this point, to wherever. I told them parking lot somewhere, to shopping mall or whatever. And then, take the car back. We'd clean the car up, do what we needed to do with it, and used it. One we got for $500. I think it was a little Japanese car. We used that I think we ended up getting about total with that one vehicle about $600,000 or $700,000 over the period of time until we got rid of it. And then I just said, it's about time. There could be somebody who saw this car at some time that we're not aware of,
Wow.
So we get rid of it.
Now at this point, like right before the first robbery, you just sold a property in Chicago. You got some money from, working with Scot on this, the first operation. You got a sizable little nut right there, right? Like financially, you're probably doing all right. You have one daughter at this point. Do you have other kids?
No, just one daughter.
Just the one daughter. Yeah. And are you divorced or you're married?
Yeah, divorced. Yeah.
So at that point, like you have a daughter. How old is she?
She was, at that time, she must have been 8 or 9. Yeah, 8, 9, 10, something like that.
And now, was there a little part that's like, this risk isn't worth what I'm putting up at stake? Like I have money, I'm a functional artist, I'm doing the art world, which is pretty rare in general to be a successful artist, and you're doing it. And you got a young kid. Is there a little party that's like, I can't do it? Or did it not even cross your mind?
No, I went AWOL, when I left Chicago, I went AWOL. It wasn't because of this. It was just the whole buildup for many, many, many different reasons. It was just you understand when you step into this world, when you step into this other world, it's an experience unlike anything else. And to come back, I look at myself now and I'm in this world and it's boring.
Yeah.
I've seen it. You meet people, you do this, you see that, you go to restaurants, it's all the same. It's not, I don't know how to explain it. It's when we were there, when we would be in a restaurant together or whatever, it was some different thing that went on. I don't know how to explain it. I always say to people, we were like two comets that were traversing the universe, and we hit each other and we're trailing together for a while, and then boom, we split up.
Right.
And we were electrifying when we were together. And whether it was with women, whether it was a lifestyle, whatever it was, building properties, doing what we did, it wasn't normal. There was nothing normal about it. I mean, you dealt with normalcy because you had to deal with the world. But I mean, even his treehouse, he would pay off $5,000 a year to the county in Olympia, to the county inspectors, to the inspection office, that inspects properties for building, so that they wouldn't come out and condemn it. I mean, they would all he had politicians, lawyers up there spend the weekend. He would let them go up with their girlfriends or mistresses and all this. You don't understand the kinds of people who knew he had this, that wanted this experience. And it's embarrassing that he was, and they didn't know he was a bank robber. They didn't know they thought at the most maybe he dealt marijuana, you know what I mean? That kind of the Northwest stupid stuff, you know what I mean? And it is, but they didn't know because he was too nice of a guy. He was too
well-spoken and charming. And
educated, and, didn't act like a gangster, drove around in an old van that he mountain climbed. I mean, we mountain climbed. He was a just fanatic mountain climber, and survivalist in his mind.
Now, you probably wouldn't have done this without him.
No.
Would he have done it without you?
No, it wouldn't have been the same. No, he wouldn't have, not the bank robbery level. No, something would have happened tragically, I think. I mean, maybe he would have found somebody, but I don't think so. It's just not. I mean, we had other friends that we hired to do certain non-risk things for us, like sit in a car with a radio on an avenue that I couldn't monitor. Sometimes a bank would have ingress and outgress, more than one. So we would have to hire somebody to sit at a certain point. If the police, which we called mamas, if a mama comes with red lights and speeding, here's one code. If they were just a normal cruiser, don't say anything. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to draw him out of a bank for nothing. You know what I mean? So we would hire them, but they all knew. But because his life was so accommodating for people that were involved, that knew this, they would never rat him out or anything like that, because in fact, they were involved as well. So they probably thought legally that if I did, I might be, jeopardized as well.
Right.
But just because of the fact that, it was a life that everybody shared everybody was those kinds of people were at the Treehouse.
But the two of you were that was
we
the
were
dyad.
The dyad. Yeah, we were inseparable. I mean, people thought we were brothers when we would go into places, but on the other hand, we never traveled. We would never, like when I lived in New Orleans or something, if he flew in, he was very nondiscreet. We were together. We would go to places, bars, restaurants, and girlfriends and all of that, but we didn't forensically tie in addresses, phone numbers, and all of that sort of stuff. We were always kept things separate.
Guys don't really talk about what happens as you get older, but you start to notice it. Your energy is lower, gym recovery takes longer, you're doing the same workouts, eating pretty well, but not getting the same results. And for a while, I just thought, all right, I'm getting older. But for men, testosterone can naturally decline as early as your 30s. And when that happens, it can affect energy, muscle, recovery, focus, and how your body stores fat. And that is why I started taking Mars for Men. I've been on it for a few months now, and I've noticed more consistent energy, better workouts, better recovery, and sharper focus going into the summer. Mars Men is just a natural supplement. No synthetic hormones, no stimulants, with ingredients like Tongat Ali, Shilajit, zinc, boron, and a bunch of other stuff designed to support healthy testosterone levels. It's made in the USA, third-party tested every batch, and backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee. And for a limited time, the listeners of this program will get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. That is mengotomars.com. And after you purchase, tell them that Mark and Christos from the campsite sent you. It really helps. Now let's get back to the show. So this first bank robbery goes pretty well.
Well, it was just a simple little, it was the same bank. His first bank robbery was with the same one. He went back and did that one when I got out there.
Wow.
He went to the same one.
I mean, I feel like that's a no-no.
Man, we did 2 different banks 3 times.
Wow.
One of them, we got over $700,000 from in total. Another one, I think about 600, 3 times. And, but there was a psychology to it. There's a methodology of when you do it, how you do it.
Yeah, what are you looking for? How do you case a bank? What were your...
Seattle was extraordinary. It was a very opportune place. You have a city that people ask us, I mean, I'm backing up, why do you keep doing it in the same place? You get known. It was because of that, because everybody knew Hollywood. The police, the FBI, and the FBI would go into all the banks and brief them on how to react if Hollywood comes in.
Right. And Hollywood, of course, is the moniker of Scot.
It's Scot, yeah. They knew him now. They know the guy with this get up on,
And they called him Hollywood because it was...
Sean Johnson gave him that moniker because, he had prosthetics, he had makeup, he looked like this Hollywood kind of character.
Can you pull up a picture? There is some photos of him going into banks with these prosthetics. If you just search, obviously, his same name, Scott Scurlock, maybe like, robbery photo or something like that.
That's one of his famous ones on the book cover.
Right.
Yeah.
This one right there.
Right.
Kind of creepy looking.
Hey, I tell you, the first time I saw him, he came out of the woods and I go, oh my God almighty, what is this? I mean, I could see that it was Scott because of his gait and, his body shape. We were the same size. And, but the phenomena of this is that when he would go into a bank, people would kind of glance at him and then they would glance away. And the phenomena it wasn't that they thought he was going to rob them in the very beginning. It was because they thought he had a skin defect. So they didn't want to embarrass him. There you go. Yeah. They didn't want to have to embarrass him.
Wow. Now, was he meant to look like intimidating or meant to just look normal? Like, what was the main goal?
It all depended on the weather and the time of the year. Sometimes I would have him in hoodie, in parkas with a hood, if it was raining and snowing, and other times it would just be a sport coat. So we changed up the clothes and everything. But no, he wanted to just go in and look like a normal guy going in, and so they don't just trip the alarm right away, and that never happened.
Right.
So it never happened.
Now, the first one he did, he put on a Reagan mask.
Yeah, that was because he hadn't had prosthetics, and that was...
Was picking Reagan intentional?
No, I don't know. I wasn't involved, but I think that was Mark who picked that one, or maybe Scott. I don't remember how that worked out, but they did it because, it was the easiest thing to do for Mark. He didn't have prosthetics, and I don't remember what Scott did. I don't know if I think he started his own. He had some loosely made prosthetics. That's why he came to me in Chicago, was to do it much better.
But I was wondering if there's like a political message there.
No, I don't think so. I think it was just because convenience and situation, and it's hard for me to remember at this point.
Sure.
But it was not something that he liked. But it was out of necessity at the time, I think. You know what I mean?
Now, you're looking at these different banks trying to case them. And what do you need? Do you need specific types of roads? Do you need a specific type of teller? Do you need a busy hour? Do you need a quiet hour? Like, what is the thought process?
Okay, it's all of that, actually. Seattle is very unique in the sense that you have these commercial areas, small or medium-sized commercial. You have restaurants, cafes, grocery stores, and then there'll be a bank or two, small branch bank. And then around that is all neighborhoods, all residential neighborhoods that filtrate money into there. And depending on the part of town, which most of Seattle's pretty upscale, it's not even back then. And so that is a perfect place for money volume. And then you have a labyrinth of roads as far as getaways. And of course, each geography of each bank depends on our getaway, how we do it, how we arrange it, how we, whether we want the bank to see the car leaves in so that we leave that for the FBI, or he's not to be seen in the car he's getting away in. And, I shadow him sometimes a block or 2 blocks away. It just all depends, the geography of how the getaway is. And I was always there in another car in case it was, there had to be an abortion, he had to abort and get out or whatever, that I could somehow rendezvous with him. I mean, that was always an option. Only twice did he ever leave his vehicle to get into mine. And that was in the last one and one other one in Portland. Outside of that, it was always 2 separate vehicles, which was the safest thing to have.
Right.
And
as far as like egress of like the doors, like did you want it to have double doors or one door? Like what were the safety precautions that these banks had that you were trying to circumvent?
basically, for him, it was the position of where the vault was in relationship to the actual lobby where the people, because he was alone. So he's having to control the lobby, control the tellers, and be in the vault to get the money. And so he had to be able to theatrically convince everybody, don't leave the premises, and make sure nobody else came in. And if they did come in, to stand in line with the other patrons. And, don't you have to make sure control everybody. And he did this nonviolently. He did this with persuasiveness and psychology, showing no fear. And psychologically, people are more intimidated that this person knows what he's doing, and I don't want to cross it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. There's a plan here that I don't want to get in the way of, versus like, this is a rogue, crazy guy.
Yeah, it's not a guy coming in swinging, afraid already, nervously and this and that. This is somebody who knows. He has language, uses terminology that only a banks would know about. I mean, I don't know how. We hired a woman who worked with us sometimes. She was Scot's old girlfriend, and we all became very close friends. And we hired her to work in the Seafirst banks there. Gave her $40,000, I think, to work there, and she was there for a year. And so she gave us all of the protocol, bank protocol, robbery protocol, all of the terminology, so Scot could use that.
Wow.
And we had, it's actually still buried out there on his property. Actually,
what's buried?
The catalogs and all of the stuff that came from the banks that she gave us, yeah. And that so they have to train from.
She wasn't working at a bank?
Yeah, she was.
But
she worked
when he was dating her?
No. That was long before in the drug thing.
Right, they're dating, and then he says, "Hey, go get this job so we can get the information."
Well, they weren't dating then. This was years after they were dating.
But did he encourage her to get the job?
Yeah, we paid her. We both did.
I mean, that's
he
remarkable.
Convinced her. Yeah,
it's not like she was working there and he was like, "Hey, by the way."
No. She had her own little business. She did a sort of business up and down from Seattle to Portland, some kind of organic food business or something.
And he says, "Hey, go work in this bank."
She didn't want to do it. She says, "It's a boring job." She says, "I know, but we need the information. We need to know when they start putting electronic tracers in the banks for us, and you'd be there and you could tell us."
Wow.
And so
And did you guys ever hit that bank?
No, we never hit hers, no. But the Seafirst we did. Yeah, that was one of our main banks, yeah.
Right.
But hers particularly, no, we never did. It was too risky, that.
Why?
Well, I mean, you never know, you know what I mean? You just, with the FBI, you don't play around with that kind of thing. I mean, the FBI is going to interrogate guys. They're always aware of inside employees helping out certain things.
So the tellers will get investigated.
They're going to be
questioned,
and she may slip up, she may not. You never know. You know what I mean? There's no reason for it. And the one she worked in was, I think it was in downtown. It was kind of a more complicated one to do alone.
Mm-hmm.
So, but.
I mean, that's such a clever little, it's such a clever way to get information. Be like, hey, we're going to pay someone.
Yeah, it is, because it's like flight attendants, they go through terrorist protocol, takeover protocol, and you have to have certain things you're trained to do and not do. And it's the same thing with tellers. You do this, you don't do this. And, and after the FBI, when she told us that the FBI came and briefed everybody, just go along with him, get him out of there. If he says he wants this, just let him do it and get him out of there, and we'll take it from there.
And you're thinking, great.
Perfect.
Wow.
I mean, he had tellers, when he ran out of his bag, when he ran out of space in his bag, the teller would say, "Can I bring you another bag, sir?" And he goes, "Yes, but just make sure you don't have any tracers or any dye packs in there." "No, sir, we don't have those in this bank," and stuff like that.
I mean, just wild.
I mean, they just... And so you ask why to go to another city. I mean, he thought of it when I was in San Francisco to look for banks down there. And I go, man, this city, man, to get involved, the culture of each city is different. Chicago, he even looked when I was living there before, and I said, man, I don't like it here. I don't want to mess with this. I don't want to, and he didn't either. It was just it's a different soul, a different energy.
Mm-hmm.
And Seattle, because it's a very liberal city, I'm not saying that the police are like that. But it's just a different psychology, and the people living there, working there, it's different.
Perhaps a kindness or a passivism in a way.
Affability, yeah. Even Portland was a little bit more offstandish.
Interesting.
It was a little bit less accommodating, you know.
Right.
But when any city is doable, but you've got to invest in it.
Right. You have to understand the soul of the people.
You've got to live in it. You've got to know the city geography very well. Scott he'd lived up in the Northwest for long before I got there, you know. So he knew the city front and back, and the psychology, the people, he had so many people that he knew, all over. And it was a safe haven. What can you say? And plus we had the Treehouse, and it was a perfect, if you live in a city and you got to go somewhere and you're robbing a bank in your backyard, what?
Right. Someone driving by and they're like, oh, that car, I noticed that car. I remember that car. There's so many ways.
Our cars, if we kept a car after one robbery, we would have places to cover it up. And we even had other people we would pay that we could keep them on their property. They didn't know what we were doing, but we say we don't want it stored at our house because we have people walking through, we just want, yeah, sure. You pay them whatever, couple $100 a month or something. I don't know,
Wow.
Just to keep the car there, and then.
Wow. So robbery number 1, he's wearing this Reagan mask, and it is a big cluster, but it works out. But at this point, the authorities are like, oh, this might have just been a crazy guy. Who knows? Robbery 2, it's a little bit more polished. You're involved. And now the police are like, okay, maybe there's a connection between these two. How many robberies until the FBI steps in and they go, hey, this is one guy doing multiple robberies and his name's Hollywood?
Well, it didn't happen. Sean didn't step into it. It never got to the FBI until I think the 5th or 6th robbery, he said. And that was when our first vault robbery. And
so you're doing the tellers for a couple.
Because he was insecure about Scott was very, meticulous about when he didn't have information. He didn't have what we have today where you can just Google something or go, information's readily available. Everything, terrorism stuff, all that stuff is available. So he was very skeptical about going and asking certain questions, to electronics place or whatever. And he didn't know what the frequency. We have our Motorola's, which are on a certain private frequency. When you buy these Motorola's, it's not like going to, I don't know, to just going
Radio
to buying
Shack
your, Radio Shack back then. These are Motorola, the high-end ones. So you had to go to an electronics place to have them program your frequency in there. And those frequencies were on 400-something megahertz. The police were on 460-something megahertz. Depending on the district, it was a little bit different, but I believe it was 460 or 480 megahertz back then. And but the private radios, you go and you have a electronics guy, and so you got to. That's okay because we were in construction. We did construction. Yeah, we got a construction. We always had stories like that. You know what I mean? So it's normal. So the FBI came in after when we did the first vault. Okay, what we did, Scott would to verify, I want to make sure our walkie-talkies will receive when I'm in the vault. Because I was saying, listen, man, this has got to end. I can't be doing this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I said, I can't do this $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 stuff, $8,000. Right. I said, it's just stupid.
Because at this point, you made maybe like $100,000, $150,000 or something total.
I don't even know. I don't
robberies.
even think that. No, I don't even think that much money. But it was just the ridiculousness of it. And I kept, he wanted to do the vaults, but he was insecure about the frequency of being called out. And I said, look, the vault door is open. It doesn't make any sense. So what we did at nighttime, he went into I was way out in the street somewhere in my car, and he went into some grocery store and went back into the freezer. I don't know. He went back and shut the door in the freezer or whatever. And we talked and it was good. Okay. So we assumed that would be like, approximately.
Yeah.
But, the vault door is going to be open anyway. It's not going to be shut.
Right.
So that appeased him. So,
and can you explain in more detail the hazard of doing a vault robbery versus a teller robbery?
0. It's less hazardous to do the vault because they don't have die packs. They don't have anything. And like we said, because we knew there were no tracers, we always waited for them to have the electronic tracers put in, but they never did. And, there's 0 risk. It's the same thing. If the call comes out, he leaves the vault just like he leaves a teller. And you don't have the possibility. All banks have little die packs, even though he made sure they never gave them to him, except one, he insisted on taking it. was a silly robbery. he he went into this one, and the woman, there was a stack of 20s, banded 20s, and he said, "Why aren't you giving me that?" And she goes, "You want that, sir?" He goes, "Well, of course." And she gave it to him, and then it had a die pack. So when he got in the car, he had to throw the whole bag out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, are the bills marked? Is that a time where people know what bills are being sent
Yeah, we
out?
always laundered our money. Yeah, they had marked bills, serial numbers. You know what I
Right.
mean? So if they ever caught us, the only way they could get it is if they caught us and we had that money on us. So what we did is that I did most of the laundering, either in Reno or in Vegas, and
Just at casinos.
yeah. What we did is we did sports betting. You bet the same amount of money on each teams that are playing each other. So say 5,500 on Oakland and 5,500 on Kansas City, or if they're playing or whatever. One wins, one loses. And if it's a push, which means, and I'd always put the money on even numbers, never like on a 3.5 point. It'd always be a 3, a 2, a 1, or whatever it was, an even number. So if it did tie, you'd get all your money back. So one would lose, one would win, and you'd lose 5% if it was that. You see what I'm saying?
But now all the money you get back is clean.
It's all clean.
And you just spend 5%.
And not only that, but some of it we would take, the following week I would go, I wouldn't do it all in one weekend. I would go every weekend, I'd fly down. And some of the money I would have them send us a check so that we could deposit in the bank for employment, That was legit taxes. And some of you get in cash. I would decide whatever we wanted. So we had there's a gambling on your tax returns. You can be a gambler.
Right. Like just your occupation.
Yeah, it's your occupation.
Did you ever have any crazy wins?
Like big wins?
Yeah, like while you were gambling.
Normal wins? Yeah.
Or were you?
Oh, we always had our own gambling
little side pot.
Yeah, I would always do. I would fly down on a Saturday morning. If it was NFL, I would fly down on a Saturday morning and then fly back in the evening, back to Seattle, and place all the bets. So you'd have to go to all the casinos. You know what I mean? It depends on how much I had, but back then you could fly with 100,000, 200,000 at a time on your person, and it would already be pre-bundled. I'd have either, depending on like a Super Bowl, it wouldn't matter. You could have bet $20,000 at a time. It's normal. You know what I mean? But the normal week NFL or NBA, 2,200, 3,500 is kind of like, 3,300, is kind of getting at the top. But if you go up to 10, they look at it and then they get the pit boss and they come and then, but it's a game too. When if you bet a lot on one team, then they'll change the point spread, which will give you an advantage to go to another casino and bet that amount on the other one. So you have this, I would say probably 20 to 30% of the time we would get all our money back.
Wow.
Just because you play that.
Right.
But you got to do it. You got to go. And I'd go on a Saturday, do all the bets. So if you got two teams playing each other, you bet the one team in one casino and the other team in another. So I'd have lists, the teams playing, and I'd have, okay, I go to this casino for these teams and these casinos for these teams. And, then you have to go. It's a little bit of a work, but it's safe.
Right. And there's never any hairy situation with those where they were like, can we sit you down and bring you into a back room and chat with you? Nothing like that.
No.
Wow.
No, because you're not, if I were to go into a casino and two teams are playing each other.
Yeah, of course.
And I put 2,500 here and 2,500, what are you doing?
Yeah. This doesn't make any sense. So what are you up to?
Yeah. What are you up to?
Yeah, of course.
But when you're in separate places, then, it's.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the way you do it.
So these teller robberies are going pretty well, and then it's like, all right, it's time for the vault. Now, one of the things that the doc points out is that the vault robberies can be tricky because you can't control the situation. So you're going in, and all of a sudden you have all these people in the lobby. You got an old guy, you got a pregnant lady, you got the teller, maybe there's a security guard, and then you go down into the vault. Someone has to unlock it, and then now you're in there alone, and you have 2 minutes to get everything you can and then get out, and you have no idea what's going on upstairs. Obviously, you have the comms, but
you're assuming a vault's downstairs. They're usually on the same floor.
Oh,
they're
really?
They're always on the same floor from everyone he did. We would have, actually the woman that worked in the bank, we would have her go in and case out and give us a diagram of the banks, what it was. But he was always made sure that the vault was accessible. But like I said, it was theatrics. He controlled the situation.
What was his script?
he would, I mean, the book better portrays it because I remember what he would tell me. It's been so long, but he would go in, okay, this is a robbery. Everybody step back. Please go against the wall. Come out of your, sir, manager, and his table in the middle of the lobby. Come over here, sir. Everybody stand in line.
Did he have a weapon?
Well, he would show his gun. He would holster his gun. This is a bank robbery. This is going to be over with quickly. Let's all just be calm and cool. And he'd put it back in. He never went like this and waved it around and scared people. He was always secure, non-afraid, never edgy. And if there was an obstacle, he would hop on the counter and jump over or something like that. If the teller wasn't there to unlock the gate to the vault, he would just jump over. I mean, we jogged regularly,
right.
A couple 3 miles at night. And, You know what I mean? I mean, we were in great shape. And, and he better than I. And we, mountain climbed and all kinds of stuff. And
were there ever security guards?
No. Only sometimes in the downtown banks, the big banks downtown. But that didn't bother me. He wanted one with one. He wanted one.
Why?
He just wanted the challenge.
But I mean, the security guard might have a gun and.
Well, they all have guns, but you go in and you have to do it, and then you have zip tie them and all of that. But then I'm not trying to, but I always tried to avoid. I said, why do you want to escalate something that doesn't have to be escalated when we can do what you're doing in a non-escalating way? I mean, you're doing it perfectly. You're learning as you're going, and you're fine-tuning everything. It's like, why? I mean, you never know what, plus you're having to, the whole thing of going into the bank and interfering in somebody's world, I never liked that. And I mean, he didn't either, where you're going into somebody's job and you're making them do something they're not, they shouldn't, that's their livelihood. And I get that, it's not a fun thing to have happen to you. You know what I mean? And, but, it is what it is. And, he did it as well as possible. I mean, there were sometimes, some people, I mean, there was some interesting, we were at a billiards place called Belltown in Seattle. And after a day of surveillance, we went in, and it was a nice upscale billiards place. And we went in there, and it was cordoned off everywhere. And the whole place, there was only 2 tables open for the public. The rest was a happy hour for the First banks. And there were probably 90% women in there because most of the women are tellers and so forth. So one of the tables was obviously by another table occupied by, 5 or 6 women, playing pool together. And he goes, Meyers, don't say a fucking word. Don't say anything. I know how you are. And I go, oh, come on, man, don't play. Anyway, we're there. And after a while, they serve drinks and food. And, it's one of those nice billiards places. And we've got a table, these high top tables, and you're sitting there, and they're right there too. And so you end up talking. It's obvious, it's just, and we asked, what's going on here? And they, we're from the First Bank. They sponsored a happy hour for us, all the employees in Seattle. And I go, really? Then after a while I go, God, do you guys ever have that crazy guy, what's that bank robber guy? Oh, yeah, he came in. Yeah, he came in one time. He robbed our bank. He was the nicest guy. It was so strange. They started talking. And Scot, I mean, his voice, that was what he's concerned with. He got mad at me after that. I said, come on, man. I said, if they didn't see you right away, they're not going to see you ever. You know what I mean? And he's right there, right?
Wow.
You see how beautiful that is? How poetical that is?
I mean, crazy.
I mean, no. And we were talking, and I mean, I didn't go into detail. I acted stupid. Like, what's it like? That must be hard. No, he does. He's kind of nice. And, they don't say that we're supposed to obey or anything like that.
Right.
But I mean, I can't reiterate exactly what they said, but they were like jovial,
Right.
And
bizarre. I mean, was there ever a moment where you guys get back to the treehouse and the two of you are kind of counting the money and going through everything, and you just look at each other and you're like, this is crazy? Or does he ever share like, oh man, that one was difficult or hard, or I didn't like that? Like, what were there ever any conversations afterwards, like on the come down?
Yeah, we always had conversations. I mean, sometimes, especially in the aborts, when I had to abort, call him out or something, he said, there was a guy once in Portland. He said, yeah, this guy, he said, man, he followed me out of the bank, one of the tellers, a guy, and I had to turn around and act like I was getting my gun out when he was outside, and the guy finally turned around and went away. And, he talks to the people. He says, when you read the book, you see how his responses were. You all have a nice day now, and just make sure you don't press the alarm for another 5 minutes, or I'll be back. If I hear that alarm, I'm going to come back, and you don't want me to come back. Something like that, So sometimes the alarm wasn't pressed for 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, whatever impressive presentation, whatever he presented to these people, they believed. Like I say, it was not this violent intimidation. It was a real psychological. It was almost, if I could think of Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
When that guy talks to you, you kind of
just cooperate.
What?
Yeah.
Who?
There's a force behind this.
Yeah, it's just like a nice force, smart and nice.
Did he ever express remorse at any point? Like, oh man, there was this poor old guy who was just terrified and he was shaken, and man, I felt bad because he reminded me of my dad, or anything like that?
Yeah, the first one he did, he was really upset. He said, because Mark was supposed to. Here's how that first one went down. They were in their vehicle, in the van they were going to leave in, not his van, but another car. And they waited somewhere close to the bank that they could see, and they saw the one patron drive up in a Cadillac, I think. And it was an older gentleman that got out and went into the bank. He says, okay, that's the one. So Mark, you go up to him and get the keys from him. Well, as the whole thing went in, Scott goes in and controls everybody. They're standing in line, and then Mark comes in 15 seconds after with this Ronald Reagan mask on and screams out, everybody on the ground, and everybody just scared the hell, flops on the ground. And then Scott turns around and he actually said his name, which was really bad, but, because he was frightened the hell out of him, he said. And then he said, no, everybody get up, stand up, Scott goes, and then some of them did, some of them didn't. And the old man that was there that had the car didn't. And then Scott says, go get those keys, get the keys. And, Mark leans over, and he's a 6'4" guy, big guy, and very nice, very kind of like Baby Huey, just a real nice guy. And he leans over, sir, I'm sorry, let me have your keys. We'll take good care of your car, or whatever, like that. And just makes the stupid thing. And Scott says, just get the keys. Let's get out of here, But he said he felt sorry for the older guy, because the way he did it was so overreacting,
unpredictable, and stressful.
And just like stress the person out. It didn't have to be like that, and it shouldn't have had to be like that, but other than that, everything went smoothly, Sometimes when he left the bank, here was an interesting, once up on one of, I think, Queen Anne Hill, and as he was going toward his car, he left the bank and he was walking up toward his car, and there was a woman doing gardening in her front yard. And you got to understand, he'd have a bag at that point too. So it kind of unusual. And, then the woman looked up at him and he looked over at her, and then, man, they just turned their head, like they turn away because of he just looks
strange.
There's something, it could be an alien.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Something uncanny about it. You see a guy in this weird mask. And you're like,
you don't even know if it's a mask because that was a distance. But, that was another example. That time we got rid of the car because of, she could have been, I'm sure she would have heard about the bank robbery, might have, you know what I mean? So we got rid of that car. It was, other than that, no, everything, the one time that he got the dye pack, he insisted, the woman was very nice, said, sir, because when he goes in, he says, don't give me any dye packs or
trackers,
tracers, and so they don't give him that. They don't give him them. And then he saw that $20 bundle, they're probably $20 is probably $5,000 or something. And he says, you want that, sir? And he goes, yeah. And so you give it, and that
it has a dye pack.
And I said afterwards, I said, this is after the vault or something. And I go, why would you do that? No, it was before the vault. I said, just forget these damn tellers. Don't even mess with it. But he had this kind of, he wanted to get everything. He wanted to empty the whole place out. This was in his head. He had this challenge. It was a challenge to himself. Does it make sense?
There's something that's brought up in the doc that there was an inspiration maybe from Point Break, the film. That kind of shows this like bank robbing, surfing guy that kind of just like lives life to the fullest and does whatever he wants. And they said that that's part of the inspiration.
No, he never.
He never brought that up.
No, they kept using that. They used that in the first 48 hours they did way back in the 90s. It was the same thing. Like, this was why he did it, because he saw the movie. And no, when we watch bank robbery movies, you just look at the flaws in it. It just doesn't work. What they're doing just doesn't work.
This violence, the aggression, shooting bullets up into the sky.
And, even Heat, which is probably one of the better bank robberies, they would never go into a little diner and get a guy that just got out of prison to run the scanner for him. I mean, to run the scanner, you've got to know the frequencies of the town. You've got to listen to them. You've got to hear the dispatch. You got to know their voices.
At the very least, an attention to detail.
Yeah, you just don't suddenly pick it up and do it. And then, some guy that gets out of the prison and you pick it, as well made as that was, but it's all made for the final Shakespearean standoff, basically, what I mean, which is film. And
what's a good bank robbery movie that you feel like really shows it well?
I can't remember the name, but it was took place in Boston.
Okay.
It was a recent one. And
do you remember any of the actors?
Violent. Yeah, I can't remember his name. He's known. If I heard the name, I would know. But
I have a feeling Christos is on the case.
Yeah, it's
Boston bank robbery, the
South
town.
Boston. That was it. Was it the Nun thing? I think. Yeah, Affleck was what it was.
Yeah, the town.
Yeah, that's
the crew of ruthless career bank robbers operating out of Charlestown, Boston.
I mean, but it was violent, but it made sense. I mean, it made like you could do it. But
so the town, as far as from a real bank robber, the town gets an A+.
Yeah,
maybe an A.
Yeah, I would say it worked. You know what I mean? I mean, you're going to get caught.
And what are the things that happen in this movie that you feel like are true to a successful bank robbery?
Well, they just, I mean, it's a violent thing, but I don't know how it ended up with the money going. It's been so long since I've seen it, you know what I mean? But it just seemed more real, like honest. It's not the best way, because how many times can you do that? You can't do what Scot did. I mean, that's 18 robberies, 19 robberies.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, and you just can't do it. There's too many people. How many people are going to see nuns? You know what I mean? You can't do it. And, plus the violent part, there's just too much forensic evidence that's left behind. There was all kinds of things in there that were traceable at a certain point. We had nothing traceable. Nothing was ever forensically.
What about license plates on the car?
Well, this is the interesting thing. Here's what we do. When we buy this car from whatever person in Seattle, wherever it was we bought it, in Washington State, the tags go with the car and then you re-register it. Well, we never registered it. We just kept the tags. But what we would do is we would go to the airport, and if we bought whatever van or whatever it was, and let's say the tags were going to be expired within a month, well, we would go to the airport covered parking lot, and find the same kind of vehicle, take its tags off and put ours onto that.
So literally unscrew the license plate, swap
them. And then swap them that had a good year of, nobody looks at your license. As long as you got license plates on there, how many people come out of the airport, you know what I mean, and looks at, and so we had that, and there was never any traceable. And, we always, I cleanse those vehicles, everything. I mean, we use mineral spirits on things. We sprayed WD-40, what's it called? The spray, you spray that on the carpets and the seats, and if the FBI vacuums, it clogs up their filters, and, just different things. If we were going to leave a vehicle, we would put women's hair in there. We get women's hair from wherever, and then put that in the vehicle for them to, if they actually got it, that they would have that and thinking it was a woman, and
wow,
different stuff like that.
And where do you learn all this?
Scot, he was like that. He should have been a CIA, or he should have been Mossad. That was his mind. He was like this clinical. He would have been great. He would have been a great officer of some sort, but he was not built in that. He just wanted to compete with them. He wanted to be better than they were, if that makes sense. What's the dedication? Sean told me, I don't want to speak for him, but he said after our case, and his profile's huge.
This is Sean Johnson, the FBI agent.
Anti-terrorism, gangs. He's up and down the spectrum of the FBI, and now he's teaching in Quantico, and he does contract for the FBI and case files. But he said after our case, he said he wanted to quit. He says no case ever. And, he was very unhappy that it ended the way it ended. He said, no one won in this.
Well, don't spoil the ending just yet.
Yeah. But it was, he
said it was unlike anything he'd ever seen.
Unlike anything he'd ever seen, and there was always it was bank robbery, which is violent. It's it categorized as a violent crime, albeit that it never ended up violent. The only violence came in the very end. And, so there was something different. It was not as if you had to get a whole army of people trying, like on town, trying to
stop this.
I mean, there was a lot of forensic evidence that they had. I mean, it was, but as far as doing it, but that's like a Whitey Bulger thing, you know what I mean? Type.
So robberies 1 through 18, no one gets hurt.
Never, no.
Like he did what he said. He said, hey, if you guys cooperate, nothing bad will happen. That's what happens. Nothing bad ever went down. And you said that there was a few operations that had to be aborted.
Yeah.
Can you take me through those?
Okay, the first one we did in Portland, the really successful, the successful bank we had in Seattle was called Hawthorne Hills Bank, in the area of town called Hawthorne Hills. And it was a Seafirst Bank. And we'd done that 3 times. And I think we got close to 700,000 or 800,000 over the cumulative time. Well, when he was down there in Portland, surveillancing, looking for banks, and he came across this bank, and it was called the Hawthorne Bank. And it was sort of like biblical to him. Man, this has got to be the one. And it was in one of these perfect residential, commercial, even a bigger commercial area than the one in Seattle. And so we went down there, and I flew in from, I was in San Francisco then. And I came up from San Francisco, and we started doing surveillance, and I had the vehicles that I had purchased in San Francisco and brought up to Portland and had it parked at the airport parking there. And he went and picked them up. And I drove one up. I drove the van up that I was going to be using, and he in the other car, which is his getaway car, which we wanted them to see and leave for the FBI. And the bank was really beautiful. I mean, it was a perfect location. And, what surveillance we had, there was one main avenue on the main road, which was where the police would come in from. And we, I wasn't stationary watching. I was circling in a block area. I can't recall now the reason, but there was a, logistical reason why I was doing that. And, so monitoring the scanner, and then, him always, anyway, I'm doing this. He goes in. It was a calamity of errors. We planned on Olympia, and we plan on weather. We want stormy weather when all is possible. So when we left Olympia early in the morning, and it's about a 2-hour drive to Portland from Olympia, and it was like pouring down rain down Portland, not in Olympia, but in Portland it was. And it was pouring all, once we left Olympia, it was raining, and, so he's in you got to realize according to the weather, we dress ourselves, we disguise, and he was in a long beige trench coat and had a hat and all along. And this was in early summer. So with a rain trench coat, it wasn't a raincoat, but it was like one of these, beige trench coats and for rain. And so we get down there, as we're getting closer and closer to Portland, you saw up in the sky this like black line from black toward our side. And as we're getting to Portland, you saw the sunshine come down. Anyway, we got down there. It was hot and sunny. The storm was gone. And I said, do you want to do this? And he was irritable because spending that much time, the prosthetics get irritating on your face, itches and all that, whatever goes on. And he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's just do it, And so the vehicle was parked in the back of the bank, and we got there. We wanted to get there earlier, but it was right at about 11 o'clock, 11:30. And this was the wrong time. That was another thing we learned. It's the wrong time because that's lunch hour, and people go to banks to get withdrawal money from the ATM, from the drive-through, and
too
all
busy.
That. Yeah, it's just too busy. You know what I mean? Patrons and all that. Well, I'm there, and he goes in the back door, and some patron that was in the drive-through to get money saw this strange guy in this coat, and it just looked out of normal. I mean, why would you have this long stretch? It's hot outside and everything. And so he's in the bank, and I get a call, and it said in the dispatch said, yes, we have a patient, we have a customer calling from the Seafirst Bank or whatever the bank was. I think it was Seafirst. And that there's a strange person going in that looks like a bank robbery. And so I called him out. Okay, here's the thing. He was in the bank while, before all this happens, and he's asking for the bank teller. And he says, well, the bank teller went to lunch. And he goes, no, I don't believe it. And, the bank was like a classical Jesse James. I mean, the vault door was one of these steel doors with the handle and everything. He said he'd never been in one so elaborate like that. And finally, this big lady comes out, and she's got some papers in her hand, and he goes, oh, there's the vault teller. Oh, you lying to me, were you? And she comes over, and she's trying to delay. And he goes, listen, you do this and you get it over with. Let's get out of here, And so the door opens, and he said there was money from the floor to the ceiling. He'd never seen so much money in his whole life. And right when he walked into the vault to start taking it, and this was before any of the tracers or they call them ProNet tags that were available. So I had to call him out. And he got into his car.
Now you go through the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
Does he just have a walkie-talkie on him?
On him, yeah.
And so when you're calling him out...
Yeah, they hear.
They hear your voice.
Yeah, they hear it, yeah.
Wow.
So they know, before that happened, the FBI already knew there was somebody on the outside. Because up until that point, they never really knew if there was anybody else involved until I had to call him out. The first time I called him out, which was when one of the robberies, that's when the FBI knew there was somebody outside. Mm. So I call him out. He gets into his car, and we do the rendezvous, and we have California plates on, which is not a good thing. I told him I wanted to get Washington plates, the California plates in this neighborhood. It's like not that common, maybe, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And one car maybe, but both of them haven't. So they identified his car immediately because he went out the bank and somebody identified it, which was not a problem. It didn't matter, but I rendezvoused with him. And then he gets in, and, we go through, and then as I'm coming up to the road to go back to the highway, to go north up on the highway, it's a main road going toward the bank or away from the bank. And right across the street was a cop entering to go to the bank. And I'm still listening to the scanner. And he's down on the floor in the back of the van. And I go, man, don't get up, because if this cop sees these California plates, it's going to be unusual that you know what I mean? Because the getaway car that he had was California plates. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of unusual in the same neighborhood.
Do you ditch his car at the rendezvous?
Yeah, we left it there, yeah.
And you cleaned it and everything?
Well, it was all cleaned before, yeah.
I see.
We meant to leave it there anyway for him, yeah. And fortunately enough for us, for everybody, that the cop went toward the bank and we went the other way, so it was all good. And we get back home, and I said, man, don't ever do this to me again. And I said, we don't, there was mistakes. I said, we never do this, leaving two cars with California plates and all, what I mean? It was an unnecessary thing, but you got, at a certain point, you've got to check yourself in confidence. You don't want to be too confident. You've got to always check yourself and, double down on security for, what may not seem that important or that you got away with once, not necessarily the second time. And
was he mad about that?
I was.
Why were you mad?
Because I told him we need to get plates. We need to go up and get plates. I said, I don't want this. You know what I mean? We need to get some other plates for all our cars. We don't want two California plates in case something goes down.
Was he pissed though, getting called out?
Yeah, he was pissed that all this money. Yeah, he was upset. He goes, you can't believe it. You can't believe it. He said, I never saw so much money.
But he wasn't mad at you.
No. And then when we get back to Olympia finally, we go celebrate. And we go down to Bud Bay Cafe down on the waterfront in Olympia is where we used to go. And we'd have Dom Perignon. He'd have the owner store Dom Perignon and Cristal for us, And he always had it in the refrigerator for us whenever we came in. And he would bring out a Dom, and we drank it, and we just cheered that we got out of that one.
Wow.
With zero, but just the fact you learn. This was the beauty. We learned never to do it at that time of day again. Mm-hmm. Although before that we'd done it at that time, but it didn't end up like that,
Right.
But it was a wrong time to do it.
How did you feel driving away? Were you full of adrenaline? Were you anxious? Were you paranoid?
You're like tight. You're like in a military focus, and you're just, my eyes are everywhere. I'm thinking of him. I'm listening to the scanner. Yeah, you're focused. There's no, people think, oh, you get high and you go just cheering and all. No, it's nothing like that. It's like we were somber. We hardly spoke all the way back, and only when we got to the cafe and started drinking our champagne for failure did we kind of loosen up, And we joked with each other. I'd say, man, don't ever fuck with me again. Like, I'll kill you. I'll take that gun off you and kill you if you ever, and he joked back at me and stuff. So it was all, but still, we knew there was certain points of seriousness where you didn't, certain things Scott would do. Like the end call was his. I mean, he's the one.
He's in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there to back him up to help.
But if you call him out, he says no and waves you off.
Yeah, if he wants this, it's his call. It's his call, because I don't want to psychologically make him feel uncomfortable. If he feels more comfortable in this makeup or this clothing that I got for him, I'd always buy different clothes and mix and match and whatever he felt more comfortable in, I mean, in the very beginning, he wore these Converse low-cut tennis shoes all the time. He used to hike in those things. And I said, man, you got to stop wearing those. You can't wear those anymore. He said, I know, but I like my, agility. I can jump and run and do what I need. I said, I don't care, man. We'll find some other shoes for you. And the FBI even noticed that.
Oh, wow. They noticed the Converse.
Yeah, the Converse, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In my debriefing, up until that bank that I first had to call him out of, in Seattle, I could lie about everything. I told the police, I told the FBI, Sean, who was debriefing me, I said, well, I only got $5,000 of robbery, and they looked at me like, are you crazy? And I go, why? I mean, I was just in a car. I was no risk. I go home, and if he got caught, I go home and I go about my business and leave or whatever. I mean, it sounded logical, naive, but stupid and logical.
Right.
But they believed me.
Underestimate you.
But then once I had to call him out, then I told the truth, because they knew that there was somebody on the outside. So I said, yeah, that was the first robbery I ever did. And I made up some convoluted story of why I did it and what he wanted me to do and all that.
But this is after everything was said and done.
Yeah, this was doing a plea bargain. And I spent 4 days with Sean for about 8 hours a day while I was in county and going through meticulously. I mean, he went meticulously from even before bank robberies, history, life history, where we, all that.
Now, what was the cadence between robberies during this period?
It depended. It depended. Like if we had an abort, like the one with the dye pack, we went back 2 days after.
Oh, wow.
Whenever we would prepare a bank, we would always have minimum 2, if not 3 banks that he would choose from in the very last moment. We would have 3 banks that we wanted. We would go through all the getaways, what was advantageous, disadvantageous, and look at it. And then it was his decision, usually on the day that we were going to do it, of which one, which bank he would take. I mean, one of them was on the same avenue across the street from each other.
Wow.
And he was supposed to do the bigger one. And then right at the last minute when I was in position and he was coming, he said, no, let's do number 2. I mean, I didn't ask why, but I just, went to focus into number 2 then, you know what I mean? Wow. So we had everything worked out depending on which one. But we'd always have 1 or 2. And in that one that I aborted, then we went back 2 days because they don't, they're not going to think you're going to come right back right away. We never had done that before, but he went right back at it. Not the same bank, but went after him. I think we got a lot out of that one.
Wow. Now, going back into the same bank 3 times, inevitably,
they knew him. They knew him.
At that point, they go, oh, hi, Mr. Hollywood. Like, was there familiarity that happened?
Yeah, they go, oh, you're back again. He goes, yeah, but this is the last time. Don't worry. Just let's get this thing over with.
Wow. And at that point, it was almost jovial in a way. Like, people would just kind of be like, all right, here you go.
Pretty much, they accommodated him. I mean, the FBI told them to, trained them to do that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a bizarre thing that it was so regular and frequent, and that they would just kind of be like, all right, well, it's happening again.
I mean, it wasn't as if we did the one 3 times.
Back to back to back.
They might have been a year later.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Still the same people work there.
But because they are so much, the volume of money was so, voluminous in those banks that we chose. Not all of them. Some were small, but, technically why we did them. But, they were just too. Just because they get robbed once doesn't mean they're not going to have money in there again.
Mhm.
You see what I mean?
And then all of these robberies from the first one to the last one, that's roughly like what, a 2-year stretch? Maybe 3 years?
No, 4.5 years.
4.5.
4.5 years.
Now, in that 4.5 year stretch, how much money did you make?
Well, I would take 40% of everything because he was always paying for the operations, like fly up, buying vehicles, buying electronics, all of the different things. You got to understand, 2.5 years, 2 years before the end, our whole plan, our whole modus operandi was we were going to culminate everything and end it with the 3 banks were right in a row, one right after the other on the same evening. The same evening.
Wow.
Because in the winter months, it's really perfect in Seattle because it gets dark at 4:00. Banks don't close until 6:30 or something. So we would start at that time. And we'd already purchased all the vehicles we needed. And Mark was going to have to be involved in this because there's too many cars involved. And I was on the radio, and they were always going to throw the money into my vehicle as they came and get into another vehicle and, as one would go. So it would be start from the north of Seattle and work our way down. And the reason why we did that is because we had to go south of Chicago back to Olympia. Well, all of this was planned, worked on, a couple years before the final act. And we were waiting, getting experience. And then what we did is that I flew out to the East Coast. I flew out to Virginia, D.C. area, because there was a CIA electronics place out there, special that Scot knew about. And I went there and I had fake ID and I went in and I bought a transceiver, very powerful, the most powerful transceiver you could get. And I made a story up that I was coming from Greece and I was on a maritime and they wanted the captain wanted this certain transceiver for his ships, his boats over there, which was logical. I mean, because to get these things, they have discs and they have to be programmed to the frequency. Well, the frequencies we wanted to program at was the police frequency that in Seattle. So they're going to know what that police frequency is. So I had to make it look like it was in Greece. They're not going to know what frequencies are in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know where we got this idea from, but it worked. I got there, I had fake ID because you have to show everything. You have to show the ID. And I paid cash, obviously. I didn't pay a credit card. And being from Greece, I came in from Greece and I paid cash and, it all looked, they were fine with it, everything good. And I came back about 4 days later, got the disc, got the transceiver, everything was packed up nice. And anyway, I got that and sent it back. I went back, I flew back with it and back to Seattle. And we had that and we had it there. We were going to set up a mobile unit and hook the whole transceiver up and jam the police frequency in Seattle so that it could just be either pre-record dispatches calling out police from whatever other previous event somewhere, or just have it white tone, hiss. Nobody hears anything. But at the end, I mean, I'm jumping way ahead of time. The reason why we had to abort that and get to the one that we did was because they changed everything up.
I see. Okay. Well, before we jump to the final act, I'm curious, this time of your life, this 4-year run, you're making money, you're getting 40% of everything that's going on. Are you taking any trips? Like, what does your personal life look like? Are you paranoid at all? Are you seeing family? Are you meeting up with friends? Do you have a girlfriend?
All of that. Girlfriends. Yeah, that was the hard part, because you have girlfriends and fortunately enough, because I was an artist and we also did construction, bought property. I had a home in New Orleans that I was remodeling, rebuilding that. There was always activity, so there was nothing lying about anything. I mean, we did construction, we did building, but there is lying. I mean, you've got to obfuscate what you're doing. And I had a girlfriend who flew for United. I'd come in after 2 months away in Seattle and she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Yeah, we had to do this building project up there. We got delayed because of da-da-da-da," whatever story I made up. "Yeah, sure." She just called me Meyers. "Yeah, sure, Meyers." And I come back with, little sacks because she flew United and they were always on per diem and, so they like change, $5, $10, when they have that. And I'd give her a sack of maybe $1,000 of loose money. She goes, "Where'd you get that?" "Oh, it's just from the construction crews. They have a pot for money for them to go to lunch when, and this is what's left over." Some stupid thing, nobody knows. I mean, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I guess something like that.
Did you ever tell anyone outside the operation?
No, I mean, no one that didn't know.
But you never got
No.
drunk at a bar and it's been like, oh man, you don't even know about that Hollywood guy.
No.
Really? Never a girlfriend? You were pillow talking?
No.
Was it difficult keeping the secret?
It's not a thing. It's kind of that's the hardest part of this world when you jump out of the world and you go into that is deceiving people that you care about.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Yeah, it is hard. And it's not like I'm embarrassed to say it, but you can't. You can't say it for their sake or, for anybody's sake, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not understandable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're a drug dealer or something, people kind of accept that world, but who robs banks? Nobody does that.
Right.
I mean, it's too crazy. I
Right.
mean, you know what I mean? It's just, but once you're in that world, I don't know how you step into some other dimension and you have this aura enveloped around you that just keeps you away. I had, the realtor that I bought my home from in New Orleans. I mean, we became close friends and, we have lunches weekly, you know what I mean? And talk and I never, she never suspected. In fact, she would, when I bought the house, when we went to closing, I remember the banker, whomever it was who did the closing, signing the papers. And she goes, this was back in the day when you could do no doc loans were it was easy. As long as, they see your bank account, they see your money and all that. But she goes, yeah, you could go in a bank, rob a bank one day and the next day go buy a house. That's how easy this no doc loan is. She was saying it in jest.
Yeah,
like I go, yeah, God, that. I kind of laughed, you know what I mean?
Wow. I mean, that period of your life must have been interesting. Was there a part of you that was like, maybe I should slow down with this stuff. Maybe we should stop.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always saying up into the end, I said, with our progression up to the 3 banks, I said, after that, that's it. This is the culmination. This is the, opus opera. This is it.
Because it's getting more difficult. Yeah. The stress was getting to you.
It's stress. It's the lifestyle. And it's also, at some point, something can give, and you just never know. As much as you're, clear on what you're doing and how you're doing it, you just never know. There's always this little element that you never quite know. And it's just nothing can last forever. Nothing, just logic in life. Nothing.
I guess it's a little bit like gambling, right? Like I'm not a big gambler, but I go to the casino and I'll throw, a couple bucks playing, blackjack or something. And you win like 5-6 hands in a row. And all of a sudden after 5 or 6 hands, you go, man, should I quit? I should probably stop because I can't keep on winning. Like, was it a little bit of that where you're like, man, how many times can we get away with this?
No, it wasn't that. I mean, because like I say, I told you asked me if I gambled. Yeah, aside from laundering money, yeah, we gambled. I mean, not crazy, but, Scott was a crazy gambler. He was ruthless. I was very conservative in a way, but we did sports betting and, sometimes we lost big bets, but usually won. Because we were pretty, back then it was a lot more calculable, especially football and basketball. It's not like it is today. I don't really even trust anything today, to be honest with you, but from what you see. But back then, you can kind of really, it was, when you're in it, a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't have that knowledge in me now like I did then, you know what I mean? But yeah, we would gamble on the side, aside from the laundering money,
Right.
on our own, yeah.
So this stretch goes on. Are you doing art at this point while you're?
Yeah, and like I said, I was doing my place was a
New Orleans.
Yeah, it was in New Orleans. It was a Greek revival home, a big place, and I was remodeling all that. And I had a little studio there that I was doing artwork in. And
are you seeing your daughter in this period?
No, that's what that was something I couldn't do. I couldn't.
Really?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other sub story, and because of the custody thing I went through and on and on and on. This was also part of one of the one of the things that it disgusted me. I mean, when you go through a custody thing and you see how the court system is.
Yeah, it's very
I mean,
much stacked against
they use
fathers.
children to keep their livelihood alive.
Mm-hmm.
They're sick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I said I was so disgusted. I told my lawyer, I said, no, I'm done. I said, she knows me. And when she becomes of age, and I'll come back, but I'm not gonna feed the system and this woman. No.
Hey guys, we're gonna take a break really quick because I want to talk to you about GLD. This is an awesome new company that we're working with that I'm actually wearing right now. I actually got this crucifix right here, and honestly, even just getting it, sometimes like when you work with some companies, you're like, all right, I really hope the product is good. This one is. I wear it all the time. This is actually like the new crucifix. I lost my last one at a bathhouse. Literally at a sauna, I lost my crucifix, which is maybe God's way of telling me something. But I got a new one from GLD, and I've been rocking it nonstop. My wife likes it, and it's got like a nice weight to it. The details actually look better in person. The clasp is like super solid. It doesn't feel like something you bought like in Times Square from a random dude. It doesn't feel like something you ordered from, some a sketchy website on Temu. And they got everything: chains, pendants, bracelets, watches. Whether you want something subtle or something that's like, I just signed a deal. You know what I mean? If you want like the record deal chain, they got that too. Now, if I haven't convinced you yet, let me sweeten the deal a little bit, all right? For a limited time, the listeners of this program, Camp Gagnon, Religion Camp, History Camp, and the entire camp universe, you're getting a crazy deal. If you use the code CAMP, C-A-M-P, when you check out, you're going to get 40% off your entire order at GLD.com. That's 40% off your whole order with the code CAMP at checkout at GLD.com. And after you purchase, they're going to ask where you heard about GLD. Tell them you heard about them from, the good folks here at the campsite. Mark and Christos sent you. And whenever you do that, it really helps, support the show. And thank you so much to GLD, and thank you to you for tuning in. Let's get back to the show. Were you happy?
Yeah, I mean, happy. What do you mean by happy? Like,
were you fulfilled? You have this 4.5 year stretch.
Man, I've been working my whole life. You mean before robbery?
No, 4.5 years before, like in the robbery period.
Oh, was I happy then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, happy, yeah. I mean, there's stress involved, mental stress, but you learn to cope. You learn to manage yourself. But toward the end, I mean, there was a lot of spiritual. I say spiritual. I don't mean it like in an elevated way, but metaphysical things that took place. I mean, I've always been very receptive to out-of-body experiences and stuff, even before, all my life, you know what I mean? And I had some wild dreams. I mean, I had dreams that Scot would come to me before a robbery, when I would come up. He says, did you have any dream about this next robbery? And I would tell him, because there was a number of times that I had dreams of the amount of money. And I said, yeah, this next one, you're going to be going through a whole squadron of police, but you're going to go right through them. You're going to get about $180,000 or whatever it was I said, Sure enough, it was within some thousands of dollars. It was, and he went right through the labyrinth of cops that he went right through after he de-disguised himself, and he drove right through them, just like I said. I mean, these were dreams. And the last robbery I had, the last one that ended everything, I was in New Orleans, and I woke up about 8 o'clock at night. I think I went to bed really early. My brother was living down there in my house there. And I woke up to this nightmare, man. And I just had I was in a cold sweat, and I got out of the bed and I walked into my brother's room, and he was playing the guitar or something. And he goes, man, what happened? He said I was like a ghost, white. And this was I was tan with, summer in New Orleans. And I said, man, I just had this nightmare, and I said I was on this beach and a shark had just bitten both my legs off, and I was crawling up on this beach, trying to get somewhere. And it was like right before I was to leave for Seattle for the last robbery. Well, anyway, I got up there, and, Scot at some point asked me, did you have any dreams about this one? I said, no, I didn't have anything. I didn't want to tell him that.
Wow.
Whereas before I always told him. He'd always ask me. And
how many of these precognitive dreams did you have?
Oh, man. I mean, they came and went. With bank robberies, there's probably 3 or 4 that I had that was pretty close to what was going on.
What do you chalk that up to?
My past. I don't know. My past. I've always, like I said, I used to astral project. And,
Did you really?
Oh, yeah, all kinds of stuff like that. My whole family did, yeah.
Intentionally, or?
No, they just natural came until I had to stop it intentionally.
And by astral projection, you mean you would
leave your body.
Leave your body, you'd be dreaming maybe, and you'd
Not
see
dreaming, you leave your body and you're aware of the outside world and you're out in the world, out.
And it would just happen at random?
Naturally.
Like you would just be sitting at the park and all of a sudden you see yourself?
Not sitting, it was always through sleep, and I would wake up in the sleep and then you would be in this other dimension. And it would, there was a lot of different dreams. Aside from that, there was all kinds of very vivid dreams that had more consequential things. And Scott did too toward the end. He started seeing demons, he said, in the forest. Coming back from the treehouse, he'd see these eyes glowing at him. Things started getting heavy. This is my whole point of this whole saga, is that some power was making us do this. Does that make sense? I mean, we had the will to stop. I don't want to rationalize out of it, but there's no logical reason for it, in a sense, either financially or it was almost as if something had to happen. And if you understand, I mean, I look at this as very symbolic. I mean, when we got ambushed by the police, I was shot in both arms. And my whole life has been my arms is what I create. I paint, I sculpt,
Build.
This hand was shot here and my whole hand was clawed like this. I couldn't open it. And, they said I probably would never be able to, which I did. And this arm was shot off. And Scott always said when we would be mountain climbing, and we would be in kind of afternoon sun up in the tops of the Olympics. And he said, man, whatever you do, never let somebody else determine how you live or die. Always have it in your own control. And what he said is that anything comes, he'd kill himself. He wouldn't allow to go to prison. He would never go to prison. And Biggins, Mark, he got shot in the gut. And, like I said, he was a heavy smoker, consummate drinker, drugs. I mean, he wasn't an alcoholic he was just heavy. He was a big guy. So everything, he got shot, he lived, but it was all symbolical. And you want to hear a story, what he told me? He's out in Western Colorado now. He told me, he said when he was in prison, one of the bullets they didn't take out lodge out because he got shot in the buttocks.
Right.
And they never took it out. And it started moving its way up, which they do, up to the surface. And it was on the surface. It was bothering the hell out of him, he said. It was, and he didn't want to go to the medical in the prison because they would just, do what they do. So he had some prisoner out on the yard, cut it out, and he wanted to keep it. He wanted the bullet himself. And then when he got out of prison, he went and had it melted down and turned into a cross.
Wow.
Yeah.
He had a religious conversion, I guess, maybe? Or?
No, he wanted to send it to the shooter, to Mike McGann, yeah. I don't think he never did, but this is what his intention was, yeah.
Wow. What other spiritual things in that window? I mean, what else can you share as far as like the heaviness of that time?
Well, the last robbery, everything, you got to understand, Scott was, like I said, meticulous in everything he did. And all of our robberies were meticulous, analyzed, overanalyzed, backup, this, that. Whereas this last one, when I finally came up from New Orleans, he left for Arizona where his girlfriend was, and he was down there. And I was up there alone. And I did the surveillance and all the stuff that I was doing. And, he kept not showing up. And I was saying, man, I'm getting tired of this. It was like, it's getting critical mass, you know what I mean? And I said, finally, I'm leaving, man, I'm going. And I'd rented a truck, or I had ordered a truck. I hadn't rented it yet, but I registered, or whatever you call it, reserved it. Yeah. And, to come and pack up the rest of the stuff I had up in his property to drive down to New Orleans with. And then that evening he showed up. And then it was like, here we are. It's like when we got together, it was like this magnetic thing, you know what I mean? And then this is what happened, why we no longer could do the 3 robbery thing, is because what had happened is that they finally got the ProNet tags, electronic tracers, put into the banks. And there was just no way we could do 3 banks with those electronic tracers.
Mm.
And when I was up there surveillancing, doing the scanner and surveillancing, listening to the scanner, the frequencies that I had logged into my scanner, they no longer worked. They were just different districts of the Seattle areas. Each district had their own frequency. And so the banks that we were going to do, there was no reception anymore. And I go, man, what's going on? Something's going on. I didn't know if it was a scanner that was malfunctioning or what. And so I call electronics place and I go, listen, I got a scanner here and I'm trying to listen to the fire department because my brother works in the fire department, whatever I said, Oh, well, and I said, I can't pick up anything. I can't pick. He said, well, they changed it. They changed it to a trunk system. Trunk system is, they have like 25 or 30 frequencies that just keep rotating so that there's never one. Like when you've got an area of Seattle and there's a call and another call wants to come in and they're still on, it's like blocked. So this trunk system, they can just rotate from frequency to frequency. So I said, oh my God, okay. And so...
Did they change it because of the slew of robberies?
We kind of thought that, but I asked Sean and he said no. So it's just circumstance, It's more sophisticated. I think probably every major city in the country does that. Yeah. And so I go there and I say, okay, man, this is what we got to do. We're going to have to do something. I said, what we need to do is in the area, we need 2 things. We need to find out where those ProNet tags are, how they have it in the money. And we need to find out what the frequency is going to be, the main frequency in that area that we want to do. We decided on this one big bank, which would have been $5 to $10 million, according to what we knew. Okay, It was a bank that I'd located years before, but it was too big for him. He didn't feel experienced enough to do it alone. And so I said, we need to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to rob this little bank in the same area, not far from that one. And we'd done that before, years before we did it. And what you do is we de-disguise you. We put you in a ski mask, put a ski mask on. Don't go into the vault, whatever you do. Just go to the tellers. And we got to get those ProNet tags. Make sure you get ProNet tags in the money. And then when I'm out there scanning, I'll hear the call and then I'll log in the frequency that it is. Because if I could have gotten the call on the final one and, with luck, the scanner, it would have, but if not, and I miss it, then, you're in a whole hell of a lot of trouble. So anyway, the call went out. I logged it into the scanner when it came out, the frequency, and it was the frequency I thought would have been too. And he gets out and we rendezvous. He leaves his car. We rendezvous in my van, and he's alone in the back of the van and going through the money. And within 5 minutes, he got 3 ProNet tags out, and I threw them out the window. So the ProNet tags is they got a monitor system in the vehicles, in the police vehicles, and they triangulate. And the closer you get, you have a light and you have a sound. It goes ding, 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 and then the closer you get, it goes ding, 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 and then the light becomes solid the closer you get. So if you throw one out, it's stationary. As long as you're driving, you know what I mean? It's always away from
pinging
you.
away.
Yeah, pinging away. So when there's a stationary one, then they're going to go to that, and they have to get it. They have to find it. They have to deactivate it, and then they keep going on to the
Just
next
adds
one.
time to their process.
Yeah, well, we got it. We did it, and it was very easy. And I said, well, if it's that easy, you know what I mean? But the big bank, we're going to have, when we're going to have Mark with us, at least there's 2 people going through the volume of money. And what was a mistake on our part, which would have been very logical, which would have remedied everything, is that they only put those in $20. What they do is they glue the tracer in between 2 $20 bills. They're glued together, and they're in a bundle. So when you break the bundle open, you can feel it. It's like a dentine. You feel it. You know what I mean? It's pretty easy. But what we didn't realize, they only put them in the 20s. So and the reason why is because, 10s are too small, 20s are what everybody gets. And if you do 50s or 100s, you're losing a lot of money. And they had these in 80 banks in Seattle. The FBI finally convinced the banks. I asked Sean, he's the one who instigated it, but the banks didn't want to pay for the service. It's expensive. It's about I think he said $2,000 a month
Right.
per bank. So you're talking.
Yeah, but how much money were they losing from these robberies? Right?
Yeah, I know, but they don't want to do it. Banks are malicious, man.
Yeah, right.
Banks are seriously malicious.
It's funny. It's another irony, right? It's another poetry where like your and Scott's greed to an extent is what got you in this situation, sort of, and it was their greed that also got them into it.
That got them into it. You know, because they're protected. It's not FCI, FDCI, you know, because that's if a bank failure. This is just private insurance, so the insurance will pay them.
Right.
But, you know, there's been no violence, but at the same time, you could have some crazies or
Who knows?
you never know. And then you've got a patron that gets hurt or harmed or, and they sue the bank for millions. And, you know, it's stupid.
Right. A copycat or whatever.
Yeah,
who knows?
copy. Exactly. You know, and, you know, so that was that. And, yeah, we got the ProNet tags out. And so we knew where they were. We instructed Mark how to do it, where to go, you know. And in all actuality, Sean, when they took over the treehouse and the property, all of the stuff they took, all kinds of evidence, everything, you know, and they found an 8-page thing that was written out entitled Procedures. And this is something we would never have left around the house. And the only thing when he showed it to me, he says, "Does this look familiar?" I was at his house some time back, a month ago. And I looked at it and I go, "No, I'm looking at it. The front page, it said Procedures. It's all handwritten." And I go, "Well, that's my handwriting." And I start reading it and I go, "Oh my God." And it's like point to point to point of how to rob a bank. And I'm thinking, why would I write that? To whom? And I'm thinking, the only thing I can imagine is that I did it for Biggins to kind of like program him to read, this is how we're going to do it. This is what, and I mean, it goes through, you could read that and go rob a bank successfully of everything, the cars that you buy, how you do it, when to do it, the frequencies, where the ProNet tags are and the money. And, you know, it was frightening. I have that now. He copied it off for me and gave it to me. And, yeah, it's like interesting as hell to me because I can't remember writing it.
Right.
That's what frightens me.
Strange.
Yeah. It's really, and it had to, the only thing I can imagine, because we would have never left something like that around a house. So, you know, Biggins flew in and I must have given that to him to sort of brief him because I had to do his prosthetics. I had to make his special prosthetics. And, you know, so that was about a 2-week process with him. So I had him study that throughout those days, you know, keep him off the liquor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's frightening to think that. I'm looking at it. I go, it's amazing how much you can't remember.
And the weeks leading up to that final one, did you feel that force again?
Yeah, I felt, well, you know, when you know the ProNet tags are in there, and Sally, who we had hired in the bank, there was a task force. There was a federal task force that we knew it was there. We didn't know whom or what. I have to back up at some point and tell you how I met Sean, okay, before all this came about. And
oh, you met Sean before the arrest?
Well, indirectly, I'll tell you about it. But let me finish this. This task force, everything was like accumulating. We knew that it's either going to be a win or a loss. And we'd invested a lot of money in this because we'd bought all these vehicles when we were planning on the three robberies, the vehicles and the transceivers, which we couldn't use now. Everything was like, wait. So we probably had, I don't know, maybe $70,000 involved in just living and, you know, working 2 months to prepare for this thing. And so we, you know, the tension was palpable, you know, it was different. We knew there was never any response by the Seattle police. The Seattle police are easy to determine. They're predictable. And it's not a criticism of them because they have their routine, they have their schedules, they have their drive-bys, they have their shift changes. You can determine them, you know what I mean, and predict them and use them to your advantage. Whereas this FBI, we never had any knowledge of. And that's what we were always apprehensive about, careful about. So now with the task force there, and we still did it. Why did we still do it? With the signs, we never would have done that before. And Scot shows up about a week before we're supposed to do it, after him being delayed at his girlfriend's. And then he says his girlfriend's flying up Thanksgiving Eve, the day we're doing this. And I go, what? well, she's going to be in the treehouse. I said, man, you can't do this. We might be dead. You know that. I mean, we knew that it was this was it. You know what I mean? This was the end one way or the other. And I don't know how we knew, but it was like after that dream I had of the show, I knew that, and I never told him, but I knew it was critical mass now. And yet we still did it. You know, this is what's astounding. A force behind us.
And what do you think that force is? Like, do you think it's
some metaphysical force? Listen, this story should be an American iconic story. It's an outlaw, modern day outlaw story. And I'm not saying it because I was involved in it or anything like that, but Scott Scurlock was a very unique individual. And you don't find personalities like him because the money didn't matter. It was just something more than him. And it was something more than me. And because we came together and we had in my life, in my world, traveling throughout Europe, I was always on the edge of society anyway. I mean, not illegally, but just, I didn't have the formula of career formula in the same way. I mean, mine was I always wanted to venture new. I wanted to see new things. I wanted to explore. And this was another exploration, you know, but when we got together, it was, you couldn't, it was just there. I look back now, and I go, how could I, how mentally, emotionally, how could I have done it? It was amazing. I look back at that personality and it's not me. I mean, it is, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, that if this hadn't ended the way it ended, this book would have never been written. The story would have never, none of this would have happened. Sean even says, if that would have been successful, we'd probably never see them again because it would have been too big of a finale. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To hope that they would come back. I mean, he strangely enough said, I hope they come back so that we can finally catch them.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Do you think it was this force? Do you think it was like, I mean, you know, any religious folks listening will be like, oh, that's the devil.
Possibly. He felt he had dark entities watching him. I didn't. I never felt a dark entity. I just felt something testing me. It was a test. I felt this. I mean, if we wanted to go out as, you know, crazy bank robbers, he could have shot it out. We could have shot it out. We could have ended it, death on the streets. It never ended that way. We left the way it was supposed to have unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
It unfolded the way it was supposed to unfold. It's too circumstantial. There's too much circumstance involved in it.
Like it was destiny in a way.
Destiny. It was all there unfolding. And this fact that we're here now, this is just the beginning of this story. I mean, it happened in the 90s, but this is the beginning. This is not about banks. This is about a realization of something that's beyond us, that's more than who we are. I mean, I don't want to act special about it, but it's just not banks. I mean, even then it wasn't banks. The banks were it's like you play dominoes. I mean, the dominoes there and you take it and you do it and you get it and you go on and you know what I mean? It's just an entity that represents something that is too dominating in our life. Why do we need banks? Why do we need wars? What is this about? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're on this three-dimensional playhouse on this planet. There's nothing makes sense. None of it makes sense. You tell me what makes sense on this planet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Religion doesn't make sense. Politics definitely doesn't make sense. Wars never make sense. I mean, what has wars ever achieved?
Right. It feels like you're in a simulation sometimes.
Yeah, it's a simulation of a sort. I mean, you know, I can't prove it or nothing, but my experiences in life, far and beyond this, are, too many experiences to make me, think otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And even the experience of prison, it could have, you have every imaginable force working against you. And yet for me, that was one of my most free, creative periods of my life. I mean, I wrote the book the first year and a half, A Stream of Conscience. The manuscript, the original manuscript written in prison, typed and written in prison, is 3 times the size of that, which I gave to Sean for forensic study. He has it at his place. And I have books of poetry. I've done designs and homes, many home designs. I did all the blueprints, everything, paintings, pastels. I mean, I don't even know. Work, I lived, worked out. You can either become a fat slob in prison and, all kinds of every imaginable ugly ailment there is to have, or you can become extremely fit. And it's like you would never have it on the outside without a lot of work. If you know what I mean, you got to work, you got to make money, you got to do, and who has, you can go to gym when you're young, but after a while, it's sort of,
life gets in the way.
Yeah, but this it's part of the routine. Your day is like,
how many push-ups can I get done?
Yeah, and you've got competition, you have it, and it's just like, what else are you going to do? It's just life. It's free.
Right.
And, it was a benefit in a certain, I don't want it again, but, it could have been disastrous. I mean, there's all kinds of people that die in there. I mean, it's not a pretty picture.
So Sean Johnson is the FBI agent that ultimately investigated and really kind of cracked this whole case.
Yeah.
When did you meet him the first time?
Okay. When we first met him, like I said, Scott was obsessed with the FBI and not having knowledge. We couldn't go to any, electronics outlet and try to, we would, say to them, we're trying to scan the FBI. What frequencies? Because they don't the police frequencies are published. You can get frequency books and find them and all that, but the FBI doesn't. So, we could never get it to scan them, to be able to use a scanner to listen to them in any way. So, like I said, he came into it about, I think he said the third year we were, after the first year and a half, he came into it because once we did the vaults, that's when he came in and he was assigned to the case. And he did, after a couple more, he did a full page or 2 full-page article in the Seattle newspaper, Intelligence, or I believe it was. And I was one day in the front house, and Scott and I, every morning we would go and buy all the newspapers, all the Seattle newspapers, the local Olympic, and we would always read crime section for any bank robberies, just to keep abreast of what's going on. And if we get any information, mainly we wanted to see if there was any tell that they would slip up on and let us know that there was tracers put in the money, Well, I opened the page up. I went and got coffee in the newspaper, and I opened up and I go, oh my God, and up the top it goes Hollywood, and there's Sean Johnson sitting on leaning up against his desk, and behind him is all the photographs of Hollywood from the bank robberies, And then I started reading this thing, and it's this long article. And he was a cool looking guy, young looking guy. He was younger than we were. And
could you pull up a picture of Sean? I think that'd be cool to see.
Yeah. And there he is now. That's him now, yeah. But he was a lot younger than that back then. Yeah. And I started reading it, and then at one point at the very end, it says, yes, and there might be an accomplice called Mark, which was that first bank robbery when Scott jumped around and got scared shitless.
He said his name.
Biggins. He said his name, and he never told me this. So I was like upset when I read this. And so what I did, I laid the paper out with Sean Johnson and in the foyer of the cottage, the house I was living in. Scott comes up from the treehouse from the forest area and opens the door, and this first thing he sees on the floor is Hollywood and Sean Johnson there, and he starts reading it and everything else. I said, why in the fuck wouldn't you tell me that you'd called out Mark? That if anything, we should have done something to try to counter that name in some way, make up another name, call, Spark, or I don't know, make some name that sounded like Mark that wasn't, because Mark is very identifiable. But anyway, nothing ever came of that. And I was upset about it, and he knew I would be. He said, yeah, because I know you would, you know what I mean? I said, well, yeah, thanks a lot, And from that point on, we had a guy. We knew who we were dealing with. And Scott had hired one of his tech friends to do surveillance on him. And he did some videos and tried to monitor him, tried to catch him in some sort of scandalous something. I think he did it for a couple of weeks, but, nothing ever came of it. There was nothing, untoward ever took place. And yeah, that was the first picture we had of him. And so that was like crystallized in me. And that was 2.5 years before the final thing. So you think, okay, it was a picture in the newspaper. But when I lay shot up on the streets of Seattle after they ambushed us, and he wasn't there in the ambush, that was the SPD, the Seattle police. So he arrived about, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes after the van had been, crashed up against a tree, and I was in the street after being hauled out of the van. And I turned my head and I saw him, and he comes running up in a blue jacket. And I said, man, there's the man. There's my guy. He came up and he was nice. I mean, you got to understand, Mike McGann, the shooter, he's over me after him shooting up. He's like on Chris Arthur. He's like on Crane. And he's got his dog Beethoven, muzzled up. And the dog was cool. I liked the dog. I've been sitting there with no arms. And, your life's upside down. So you can't prepare for this kind of stuff. And this guy's around me with his shotgun, and he's going around me in circles. And I said, man, chill the fuck out. You dead you or something like that. Yeah, well, you're done, man. You're done. Yeah, well, okay. Just chill, Well, anyway, he was crazy. That's what he was. And here comes Sean. He comes running up, in a blue jet, because this is a stormy night. I mean, that's why we did what we did. Not only because it was Thanksgiving Eve, where there's lots of money, but because it was a storm, perfect for us. And I mean, hellacious winds and rain, thunders, and and he comes up in his blue FBI Ranger, and he looks over and he starts talking. Is this you? Is this you? He has the poster that they had all over Seattle banks of the 2 renderings they did, which didn't look anything like us, And I said, no. He says, are you Hollywood? And I said, no, I'm not Hollywood. He must have gotten away or something like that. See, he had been on the shootout. He got away. Scott got away.
So can we go through that final day?
Yeah.
Okay. So the morning you wake up, this is supposed to be the last robbery, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Going into it, it seems like there were a couple things working against you, right? You mentioned the scanners aren't working. You're mentioning that Scott seems like he's a little out of it. He's, in Arizona. He's got this girl flying in. Like, it seems like he's a little bit checked out. You got to pull Mark in, who historically has not been the best accomplice with any of this stuff. You got these now tracers that are in all the bags. You got to go through what's going on with that. So there's a lot of stuff stacked against you. You have this awful dream. So you wake up on the day, and what is the mood?
Well, before that day, we'd become solidified. Mark had been there for a week, and like I said, I did his prosthetics, had that going. But the actual day of waking up that we were going to do it was stormy even in the morning. And we were very solemn. I mean, we're very focused. And we go into the studio, and we'd predicted our time of the day. And we knew, we have to go through, Scott had already gone through the one previous robbery and got all the tracers out, all the Pronet tags out. So we'd brief Mark over and over and over again. This is where they're at. It's like you're going to feel it when you break the band open. You're going to feel the lump in the band, and that's where they are. And so I was doing his makeup. Scott was doing his own because he always liked to do his own. So and I was doing Mark. And I had sculpted a mole on his cheek. And I started coloring that a little darker, And I mean, he looked like one, horrific motherfucker, you know what I mean? And he, he's 6'5", and he's, he's intimidating anyway. And I say, man, you look like one mean mother. He says, this guy's a gentle guy, He says, I don't want to scare him. I said, what the hell are you talking about? That's what you're there for. You're there just to freeze them. You don't have to talk, just be there, just stand there, And, we're doing this and everything's solemn. All the cars my van's clean, their vehicle's clean.
And you've agreed on just one bank at this point.
Yeah, we had to just do the one, but it was big and we knew there was 5 to 10 million in it.
And so why would you bring Mark along?
Because there was too much money. He had to help carry out the bags. The bag that the $1,080,000 is what they ended up getting. I didn't know that then, but according to the FBI, it was $1,080,000. It was over 80 pounds. And if they'd have had all of it, it would have been probably 3 or 4 bags. They would have been hauling a lot of money. And, but I had to call them out before they could get all the money.
So you all get into your separate cars and you go to the bank.
Yeah, we go to the guy, and I go to my point where I'm stationary, and we have already worked out rendezvous point where I'll go and meet up with them, and they'll jump into my van with the money and everything. And we leave their vehicle there in the streets, and they start going through the money. And our rendezvous was such that we were in the very north of Seattle, and we have to go south all the way through the city. You can either take the highway, but you don't want to do that because you got tracers. So we created a circuitous route where you're going up and around and back and around. So it's very complicated. And I had to, go through that many, many times to get it down flat. And after I picked them up, we went driving back into the bank, toward the bank.
When you pick them up, you mean?
Yeah, when they changed over into my vehicle.
So they go in.
They go in. I'm stationary.
And everything goes fine on the inside.
Yeah, they go fine until I had to call them out.
Because you get something on the scanner?
Yeah, because the call came out. The robbery came out. So I had to call them out.
You call them out. Immediately, they hear it, and they say, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, and they leave. And they'd been in there over 5 minutes already.
Which is pretty long.
It's a good haul, yeah.
The typical run would be 2-3 minutes, maybe?
I mean, a teller, they may even be a minute. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not, he was normally 5 minutes. This was a short run. Normally he's in there in a bank 5 to 10 minutes, depending. Oh, wow. Yeah, in the vaults, yeah.
So 5 minutes, they're able to
That was kind of quick.
They're able to get that one bag.
They got the one bag, which was over $1 million, yeah.
And now they haul it back out?
So they haul it back out, or they get into their vehicle, and then they drive to our rendezvous point, and I meet them. I'm already there, because when I called them, I went and I got in the vehicle, and because I'm sitting there stationary looking out for the one road where an ingress would come in, where the police would come in case the call didn't come out and the police were coming for, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then plus we had Sally, who we'd hired in the bank. She was way up on the hill from the highway with our radios letting me know if a cop was coming down so I could get a pre-up, because it was probably from the top of the hill down to the bank was probably half a mile, quarter of a mile. So it was enough time to get them out of there if there was a cop that came up from up above. So we had her sitting up there. And also she would be shadowing us in the getaway if we needed. We had 2 extra cars in the getaway that if we needed to abort, that we could get out of and just leave and get other vehicles and go. But yeah, we rendezvoused, and they got into I remember he jumped out of his car, out of the back of the van, out of the back of this car, and jumped in. He says, man, maybe we better abort this. And I go, Scott said that. And I go, what the fuck are you talking about? Let's just do this, man. Let's just do it. Let's get this shit out. Let's get it.
What does he mean abort it? Like just toss it all out?
Yeah, leave the money and let's go, because of the tracers. You can't take it with you. You just leave it and go. And I said, no, man, let's do it. You just did it a week ago. We just did it 4 days ago. Let's just do it.
Dump it out, start going through it.
Let's just go through it, man. Do it. Concentrate. And I'm driving, and, the scanner's going, and, the onslaught was nothing like the police had ever had. This was because we assumed that this was going to happen.
The task force was in town.
Yeah, the task force, because it was Hollywood now. It wasn't the ski mask guy that took that little bank, which the response was just lame at best. They didn't care because they could follow the guy home and follow him with the tracers. You know what I mean? A normal bank robber would just take him home with him, Whereas this, it was immediate. Hollywood was known.
So they get the call. They say, hey, Hollywood just robbed us. Go get them.
Well, they just said a bank robbery, and they knew. Everybody knows, that whatever they said on the private line maybe. But, yeah, they did say it was a makeup.
Wow.
Yeah, the dispatch comes out. Yeah, we have 2 white males with makeup on and so forth. So they knew it was Hollywood.
So now you're driving your route that you had practiced.
Yeah. So they're in the back going through the money, and I'm driving the route. And our route was that we go back in toward the bank from up where we were. I was behind, maybe 5 blocks north of the bank. And then I went back down because we got to go south. And I go back and I take a left up into the residential area. And right away, here comes a cop car up the street right behind us. And I turn, and he turns the opposite way, but then he stops and turns around. And I said, well, they're on to us. And Scott says, let's abort. And he says, here's one. And so I throw the bundle out. He'd found one of the Pronet tags. We didn't know how many are in there, obviously. So by me throwing that out, that one cop that was following or, trying to track us had to stop and find that and deactivate it. So that gave us 10, 15 minutes, and they were still going through the money. And this was the calamity of everything. This is why nothing like this would have ever happened before. And on the getaway, we just passed one of our drop cars, one of our cars that if we wanted to abort, we could have gotten into. And Scott goes, yeah, well, I've gone through all the money, man. I want to drive now. I said, no, we can't do this. I got to drive. I know the town. I said, I know where we're going. Don't worry. Just keep going through the money. We only got one. There's got to be more in there, man. Just keep going, I'm fretting. And he's a very stubborn guy. When he wants something, I said, okay, get up here. Come on, let's go. And I looked back, and they didn't have any order to the money. It was just a pile of loose bills now. And I said, what in the fuck do I do here? When am I supposed to start and begin? And, Mark, I don't know. I can't even remember. He's there, and, what he's doing or not doing, I don't know. This was what I hated, Scott and I were alone. Everything was seamless. But here we got another entity. It's not seamless any longer. I'm not blaming him, but it's just
adds another variable.
It's an energy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's Scott. He's in the driver's seat, and I'm saying, get out of here, man. You can't wait. And he's trying to take his coat off. And I mean, you're talking about it's outside. It's raining, hellacious rain, storm, night. You can't see in a vehicle. I said, forget the mask. Just go. Let's go. Don't worry about your makeup, And he was there probably for a minute and a half. And as he goes up the knoll, the top of the knoll, we're in a residential area too, turns left, and then right behind the cops are there because they triangulated, and he drives. He's not driving fast. He's, just normal going on, I guess, trying to figure out what to do. And I'm kind of laying forward because you can't lay flat because of the money pile. And my arms are behind me like that. And Biggins suddenly gets shot. He says,
is Scott in his car?
No, he's in the van.
He's still in the van.
He's driving the van that I was driving because he wanted to change positions and have me go through the money.
Got it.
And then, so Biggins is on the left. I'm on the sliding side door. And Biggins says, he just falls flat. He says, they shot me. Just calm like that. Just like, they shot me. Scott stops, gets out.
You hear the shot?
No, I didn't hear the shot. I didn't hear anything, no.
Wow.
But they shot through the back of the van, the police, when they ambushed us. And they shot Mark first. He was behind the driver's seat. And, we got money. I mean, we're this close together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's nothing, It's a little cargo van. And so Scott stops and he gets out, which was one of his modus operandis. He had this assault rifle with armor-piercing bullets, which he had read a case of a bank robbery, an ex-cop who robbed a bank in Chicago, and he was being chased by a cop, and he shot the engine out and got away. So he always had this in mind that, disable the vehicle, the cop vehicle. So he gets out with that rifle to shoot the cop that's pursuing us, and it jams. So he gets back in, he throws the rifle in, he gets back into the driver's seat, and the sliding door is still open, and I'm sort of there on the side. And then they start shooting again, and then they shot my left arm, and my left arm sort of goes flying in front of me like this, They shot the whole bone off, and I yelled out some of those fucking fats or whatever. I said, they shot my arm off like that, and that scared the hell out, because I screamed it. Unlike Mark, who just sort of like calmly said, they shot me. I'm screaming and I'm mad, you know what I mean? And I'm on my knees and my arm is just flopping from side to side, the pain of that. And then Scott stops again and he gets out and he has his Beretta shotgun, which is like a semi 5 or 6 shot semi, and he has slugs in them for the engine too, not for, spraying out to hurt people. It's for the engine. And he was right there on the sliding door, and I hear one shot. Evidently there was 2 from what they said, forensics said. I heard 1, and then nothing. And he jumps back in, throws the shotgun in, and gets back in the driver's seat. Then they start shooting in the van again, and they shot my other arm. And so I'm laying like this with my arms behind me, laying as flat as I can, armless. And, just like the legless sharks, you know what I mean? It was the same thing, only they were the arm. It's too close. You see what I'm saying? It's too close. And there's blood, and then suddenly the van stops. It juts up. I mean, it's not he's not going fast, and it hits a bush or a tree or something, and the windshield wipers are still flapping by, and the ting of the van from the rain. And he leaves, Scot left. And then you hear the cops out there, shoot that motherfucker, kill him, and you could hear pop, the shots going through the neighborhood. This is a residential area. And, he gets away. And then there we are in the streets, and I'm, McGann comes with his shotgun, get out, you motherfuckers, get out, I'll kill you all. Or, it kept going on like this, like some big badass, you know what I mean? And so I hobble, I get out and, I didn't have arms. So, you put your arms down to lay flat on the ground. I just had to flop down, you know what I mean? And he said, put your arms. I don't have any arms, man. You shot my arms off. He says, put your arms around. I said, fuck you. I don't have any arms, and then some other cop comes over and contains me and all the, you know what I mean? And then I'm laying there. I lay there, and I look into the van and I mean, you're in your life's upside down. You don't prepare for, even if you do prepare, it's not.
You're in shock, adrenaline, losing blood.
Adrenaline. I look back in the van and all these laser lights, just from the bullet holes that the cops shot there's just these streams of light into the van. It just like, I looked at it and it was just like, God, how beautiful. It just looked like angels in there, And then I started hearing this music, this serene, the most beautiful music I've ever heard, harmonics and overtones of a choir, like this beautiful, beautiful, just encompassing my whole. I just go, God, this is beautiful. This is just like the most beautiful experience I ever had. It was amazing, and it lasted about a minute, and then the shooter McGann comes over and, he breaks me out of that reverie. And then he says, yeah, your fucking friend, he left, huh? Left you. And he said, what, that's a good friend who left you like that. And I said, I don't remember what I said, something, it's in the book, whatever I said, you know what I mean? And, he goes, yeah, well, we didn't get you, but the courts are sure going to fuck you up. The courts are going to take care of you. And, in the book, I said, whatever, some mental dissertation went through my, fuck the courts. I don't, whatever they are, whatever bag of hell they're going to send me, I don't look forward to that, or, whatever it was I said, and, he kept going around me with his shotgun, and then until Sean showed up, then the guy was gone, because Sean was the authority of all of it. And, he realized, and when I saw him come up, it was like, there's the guy, and he was a great guy. And, it wasn't like, wasn't like a friend, but it was just a professional.
Mm-hmm.
He was a professional and he acted like it. He didn't act like some crazed, crackhead like McGann was. And, then the legal thing, once I got into the county, and first I go to the hospital and, there was some of the cops, I was there for 3 days in the hospital and, you're shackled and to the bed and everything. And, they have cops there 24/7. And some of the changes of cops, they would come in and shake my hand and said, I don't know how you guys had the balls to do what you did, but it was pretty amazing, And then there were just others that were just like, oh man, these guys, these are punks, I'm so glad we should have killed them and stuff like, you overhear them talking,
Mm-hmm.
their gibberish and their cacophony and all that sort of stuff. And then, the marshals, when we would be, transported from the county to the hospital, wherever they transported us for our medical reasons, they were always cool guys. The feds and marshals were all,
mm-hmm.
they're all, because they understood, Sean understood what he was dealing with. He understood that, you know what I mean? And then now, after the Netflix, through a mutual relationship, during our legal, strategies and everything, one of the investigators for for Mark's lawyer, she was an investigator and she went and did all the forensics. She saw what happened. And they didn't allow it and they didn't put it in court because it was a plea bargain, so it wasn't a trial. And, but she saw what really took place and she knew this and this. And, there's no way that they would have, they could have shot from the van, all the bullet. When you look at the back of the van, everything's splayed inwardly, the metal, from the bullets. And, Mark did. He said he did shoot his 9mm out as he lay flat, shot it out the back of the window, which was stupid, but he did.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
but he said he did it. So, and he didn't remember any of the process of how this thing went down. He says it's just like he blanked out. So,
and then
so we found after the Netflix.
Before we jump into that, what happens to Scot?
Okay, so Scot got away. Okay, yeah, this is the beautiful thing. I don't know, beautiful, symbolical thing. He had to have been shot. His father, when he saw the autopsy, there was one bullet wound to his leg, which would crust it over. That was older than his headshot and the other bullets that the police had shot in. But what he did, there was maybe 2 blocks away, there was a camper in the backyard of a house, and he got over the fence, and he got in it somehow, and that's where he was held up for over a day, held up inside this, and he would have never done that. If he hadn't have been shot and injured, he could have, he would have, his disguise was off. He could have gotten rid of everything, gone into a bar or someplace nearby. It was in that area, and plus we had our drop cars nearby. He could have gotten away. He was in better shape than any of the cops were, and he would have gotten away, but he didn't because he had a wound. So he was held up, holding out, and they didn't find him for a day. And the reason why they found him is because this was a house of some elderly lady, and she had 2 sons who were loggers, who were, I guess, in their 40s or something. And they were concerned because there was a whole dragnet around that neighborhood where mother lived. Everything was cordoned off for the whole night and day and everything. So they went over to try to make sure everything was okay. They wanted to go through the house and make sure he wasn't held up there or something. And they went out to the backyard of the camper, and they realized that the camper door was always, their key would have unlocked it, but it was locked from the inside with a latch, and that would have never happened. And so they were suspicious, and then they looked into, how the campers come up over the truck, there's a little window. They looked in and they saw a person underneath the plastic tablecloth, under the table. How those horrible little campers are, And so they called the FBI, the police, and then they had just a huge, dragnet of cops and FBI and detectives and all kinds of stuff going on like that. And, they kept calling out. And by that time, this whole thing unfolded when I was in the hospital right away. I was being interrogated. Biggins, Mark, was in operating, and, he wasn't verbal and available. And I'm in there, waited, I think, 3 hours waiting for surgery. I'm like, I was drugged up, obviously. And Sean's there, and I go, they had his guns already. They had the guns, so they could have traced the guns. And I said, well, just, where's Hollywood? We don't want anybody further to be hurt. And I said, well, the only people that got hurt are us. You know what I mean? What are you going to do? And I said, look, just get his gun. You got his guns, trace him. You can, well, it could take 2 days. And I go, 2 days, you're the FBI, and evidently it does. That's what he told me now. And the reason why I even told him the name is not, Scott and I had spoken about this before, long before. We said, look, at this point, if anything happens to us, Biggins, you, me, there's no back, we're all forensically tied. It's, there's nothing. You got to do what you got to do. I got to do what I got to do. Everybody's got to do what they got to do. And it's true. You got to make the best situation that you can. And so the problem I had was, which we argued at intensively, is his girlfriend being at the Treehouse. And she was there. And I said, can you imagine these cops going down, and when they get the address and seeing a Treehouse, and if they didn't kill her, they would have put her in jail until they figured everything out. This girl didn't know what was going on. She had no idea. She lived a lifestyle that she liked because of Scott's lifestyle. So she knew something. You know what I mean? But she
didn't know he was robbing a bank.
No, she didn't know that. And she didn't deserve, they're just naive young people, young women. And, they don't deserve that. And so I said, okay, as long as, you're going to get him. I said, anyway. And I said, you're going to find out who he is. And, but you got to promise me this, is that his girlfriend is there, and she's going to be in the Treehouse. And he goes, Treehouse? And I said, yeah, it's the biggest treehouse in the world. And he kind of looks at me and shakes his head like that. And, I said, da-da-da. I said, her name is, Janine, and, make sure you don't hurt her. She's not involved in any way. She just came in for Thanksgiving, and, I tried to make it as easy, sooner or later, they're, it's just, you're stupid to think otherwise. He would never have gone back to the treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
It never would have entered his mind. He's not that stupid, if he'd have been not shot.
Mm-hmm.
If he'd have gotten away, he would have never gone there. And so anyway, they go down there and they do cordon off the whole property, everything. And he's still up there in the camper overnight. And this was at nighttime. And so it all went through the whole night and then the whole next day. And when the two brothers found him in the camper, then the police came and they started calling him out because they knew his name at this point now. And no answer. And they shot in tear gas. And nothing happened. They put tear gas through the window, and nothing happened. They were saying, you can't live through that in a little camper like that. Scott was a survivalist. He read about all that stuff. He hiked alone a lot in the mountains just to test himself, and nothing happened. And then, it kept going on and they kept calling his name and they, the whole place they had an amphibious vehicle that tried to get into the backyard and it got stuck on the fence. They were going to come and crash the camper over. And they don't, the cops haven't seen that there was anybody in there. They're just taking the word of this guy, and there was no reaction from the tear gas. And so then or the pepper spray. And so then they shot in tear gas. A detective went up to the window. There's a little latch window, you can go put your hand through and unlock the door. So he started fiddling with the latch, and that's when a shot went out. And that was Scott. He shot him. And then the detective ran, and then the police just started shooting. I don't know how many rounds. I think Sean said something like 70 rounds were shot and just destroyed the van. And still no word, nothing. And they still kept going on and on and on until they brought his girlfriend up, and she called and she kept saying, he's dead. You've already killed, he's not going to do that. It's in the book. Everything is really the dialogue, all of it's in the book. You may ask how I know that. I had her, when I was in federal prison, I had her write me about it. She wrote about a 20-page letter of all of the dialogue, all the different people, all that took place from when they came to when she was in Seattle. So I reiterated and, sophisticated it.
Uh-huh.
But all of that information came from her. So I knew that. And plus from newspaper articles that I was able to get. So that's there. But, the detective, this is what Sean said. The detective went up to him, he said, that man could have killed me, but he didn't. And for Sean, he always said, I never knew Scott Scurlock, I only knew Hollywood, but and I would have liked to have met the man and shaken his hand. Can you believe that? It's beautiful. Not that he condones the bank robbery, it wasn't that, but he just respected the way it went down and the way, he could have killed the guy. He could have gone out blazing, like you see in Hollywood.
He had weapons. He had
his 9mm and he had a PPK on as well. And, he could have done any number of things. Even before that, he could have. We all could have. I didn't have any arms, but you know what I mean? Before it got to that, it could have, we could have stopped immediately when we first saw the police and all jumped out and scattered and all number of things. But why it took place the way it took place, I don't know, man. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. You blank out, but you don't blank out. You see, everything unfolded and you saw it unfold. And I don't know how to explain it. It's something that had to be the way it was.
When did you find out that Scott had died?
On TV in the hospital. And he committed suicide.
And what feeling came over you?
Relief for him. That, that's what he always said would happen. Other than that, he said if it ever came to that, he would decide his own fate. You know what I mean? And I've respected him for it. People say it's weakness. what's weak about not facing prison? What, does that make you a strong man to face prison? Oh, kind of stupid. You didn't man up to it. What the hell, he didn't man up to it. I mean, that's a samurai morality in a way. I mean, to me, I don't look to commit. Neither did he. It's not like he longed for it. There's no.
Didn't have a death wish.
But you prepare your essence. I mean, it's no different than a warrior going in and seeing right in front of him, but doing it to protect his mission, whatever that may be, even though he knows he's going to die. I mean, this was like for us, a warrior without physical violence, in a sense. Every time we went into a new operation, you had to approach it soberly. You didn't, they always wanted, these articles and people, oh, they got the adrenaline, they had this, no, it wasn't like that. Even after a successful operation, robbery, we would be back, and after everything was cleaned and money was sorted out and everything, we high-fived and gave each other a hug and good job, that was that. And then we'd maybe go usually on the successful ones, we always split up. He would go his way. I would, get the money prepared to go to Vegas before I went back to New Orleans or Frisco, where I was living at the time. And, but we didn't like party and get drunk and all that sort of silly shit. No, it was clinical.
Right. After you sort of came to and kind of got more stable in the hospital, did you feel relief that you were caught?
Oh, man, I don't remember. I didn't feel relief. No, I didn't feel relief. I felt uncertainty of I'm in mode 2 now. No longer is it Steve Meyers preparing a bank robbery. Now it's Steve Meyers in survival mode. Scot didn't enter into it. Biggins in a certain sense, because we're both there, so we have to, they tried to keep us away from each other so we couldn't, we wouldn't coordinate our stories and so forth. And fortunately enough, Mark didn't have a lot of knowledge. He only did 2 robberies with Scot, so he only knew that. He didn't know details of all those years at all. So that wasn't really a problem. But
what was Mark's deal? Like, what was
same as mine? The only deal he got is that his girlfriend, because they had robbed a bank alone. They actually robbed Scott's bank in Olympia, which he had to pay for. Mark had to pay Scot. I don't know. He told him, just not because he wanted the money. He said, I want $20,000 from you, just because you took my gun out of the Treehouse and you robbed my bank, my personal bank in Olympia, and everybody in friggin' Olympia almost knows you.
Wow.
And his girlfriend put him up to it.
Because she loved it.
Yeah, she was a bitch. I never liked that woman. She was like Morticia, you know what I mean? And
so he got jammed on those 3. On the first one, the one he did alone,
and his
then that
proffer,
one.
The only thing he got, our deal was 21 years, and it was actually a deal that the judge would decide on a high end or a low end, 21 to 24. The judge went to low end, obviously. And his deal was, she wouldn't be indicted, his girlfriend. Wow. Somehow, I don't know why. She'd done, you know what I mean? But
so she walked away.
Yeah, she walked away, and she's, even to this day. And I didn't get anything other than the fact I didn't get anything tangible to it at all. But the only thing we had to do was we had to do a debriefing with the FBI. And I said, yeah. And for me, this is where I had my trump card, because I knew what the FBI had on us. I knew what bank I could lie about everything. When I knew they didn't know something, I could lie and obfuscate and make up a story, whatever it was. I made myself look less vulnerable, less comparable than, would have been. And, when Sean read the book, he said, man, I didn't realize I thought you'd only done a couple, 3 robberies from what you told me before.
Wow.
And, but I was trying to save myself. So Scot was dead, so I could just say anything I wanted to say, as long as I knew they didn't have forensic evidence. Like when I made a call out, then I had to tell the truth. I had to say what it was. But I always told them I always got $5,000, and they would look at me. His partner, David Burrell, he was a cool guy. He was more of a street FBI agent, liked him a lot. He jumped up on the table and he said, $5,000? Are you crazy? And I kind of looked naively, and I said, I mean, I didn't do anything. I'm sitting in a car and I got a radio. I mean,
I'm an artist. It's a lot
I'm
of
an
money.
artist. I don't know. It was $5,000. It was no big deal. You know what I mean? I'm not going to if he gets caught up, I mean, I'm out of there. I'm not. And they all believed it.
Wow.
So not until the real story comes out. But, I didn't want any restitution too. I didn't want to have any, I'm not going to pay all that money back.
Right.
And you know what I mean? I mean, I had my own thing going, but I'm not going to pay back millions of dollars.
Right.
I mean, you got to go through prison with a restitution. You're in not happy shape. You know what I mean?
So you got to keep the money. And
I had what I had. Yeah, I had my money, and I didn't have any restitution. I mean, you have some little thing, court costs, I don't know, $500 or something that everybody.
Attorney fees?
No, I had this, she was a public defender, but she was a really good attorney, actually. And she came to me, actually, because she saw what was going on with the police on the night of the shootout. And it was like legally illegal what they were doing,
Right.
Especially after being shot up and vulnerable and using us in the way they used us, you know what I mean? So she came to me, and another attorney had come, and they wouldn't give me the name. They tore the cards up.
Wow.
So they kept any attorney from me until she somehow insisted and got through. So
you get sentenced in 93?
96.
96.
Yeah, November of 96. Yeah, Thanksgiving 96.
Okay.
Well, it was probably, no, before we got convicted, it would have been 97 because it took a half a year to get to the court. Took a half a year negotiation. I was in about 6 months in county jail, which was a horrible nightmare.
And then what's the prison you spent most of your time in?
Boy, they shipped me all over the place. Sheridan was where I started in Oregon. Yeah, which was a cool place. I mean, it was high security, but the higher the security in federal prison, the better the place is. The lower you go, the more scum you get.
Yeah.
Because it's just, drug molesters, all that kind of garbage, you know what I mean?
And you were telling me before some of the people you were in prison with.
Yeah.
Who were they?
Well, I mean, CIA agent who was a cellie of mine, who was Harold Nicholson, who was in there. He got indicted again in federal prison while he was in prison.
Wow.
He was smuggling information out through his son to the Russians, yeah. He and I were cellies. He was big time, yeah.
And then other people?
Yeah. John Conley, Whitey Bulger, FBI agent who was used Whitey Bulger for information, him. Waco, one of the Waco, Jamie, what was his last name? Jamie, he was from L.A. He ran the chapel, the music in the chapel. Yeah, the stories I heard about the Branch Davidian, oh my God, almighty, boy, that was a murder mayhem. That was a Clinton murder machine. Janet Reno Clinton murder machine, yeah. They went after that, and they finally got out. They got out after 10 years. They got out. They got 40 years knocked off of their sentence on the bogus gun charges from a pro bono Supreme Court lawyer.
Wow.
Got them all out.
Yeah. The
rest that were alive, that weren't murdered. And, there was others. There was, there's some famous, there was a lot of big cartel guys, Mexican-American, and they were all really cool guys. One of the accountants of, who was a cartel guy in Colombia, what was his name?
Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, Escobar. His accountant was there in a West Texas prison I was at.
Wow.
Yeah, he was interesting. There was a lot of interesting people along the way.
Yeah.
But, when I got to North Carolina, that was the last place I was at.
Did your daughter visit you in prison?
Yeah, in North Carolina, yeah.
That must have been...
Well, yeah, she came to Texas once, too, yeah.
That must have been interesting that's kind of the time that you and her are reconnecting.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, that started, we wrote letters. And I actually, when I was selling with a Turkish multimillionaire, he was from Istanbul, he and I were cellies, and he pretty much ran the prison. He paid everybody off. And so instead of using his lawyer, lawyers don't want to deal with this Mickey Mouse. He paid my daughter to send checks out to all the different Mexican people who did favors for him, cleaned his clothes, made food for him and all that. So she would make, $500 a month. And that kind. She was beginning her teaching career, so that, it was something. And, I mean, it was a shock to her when she realized it, but once we got together, it was just, she knows who I am. I mean, we had a great childhood, and,
Yeah.
she traveled, she lived in Europe as a child, and,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could do an entire episode just on the prison experience, which if the people are interested, please let me know. But eventually you get out in what, 2014?
Yeah, it was, I actually, with this, I got subpoenaed when I was it was in North Carolina, I believe, the first place. It was well run, whereas this low security place was just run by degenerates, I mean, the warden was some half-breed something. I don't know what he came from, where he came from, but he was a degenerate. Place was a tramp house. It was a slum. Illegals off the border would come into vans and just rabies and malignant this. And I mean, it was disgusting, filthy. I wanted to get out of there. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of it? And then once you got into that place, they don't want to let you go because they all get money out of that thing. They all get they get kickbacks and they get them populating. So you got to do something radical to get out, And I'm not a gang member. I never was. And I didn't run with that crew or any of that. And so, I'm solo, and it was a horrible, overcrowded place. And I got put in the hole there. I mean, I don't know if you want me to say it on air, but
sure.
In the chow halls, you have these long lines, and at lunchtime, I mean, it would take you an hour just to get in to have chow, and you get in there, the warden would run around. He was like a 6'4" guy. You didn't know, Pakistani, Mexican, black. You didn't know what the hell the guy was, and he had these his pants were high cuffs, and he had white socks. He was the goofiest looking thing you ever imagined, mean, horrible, mean guy. And he's no talking because it was like they wanted you to eat and get out. And I'm talking to some guy, and he comes up and he says, you stop talking or get out of here. And I just looked up out of I didn't even know. I mean, I looked up at him and I said, I go, fuck you like that. Screamed it out. And he looks at me, he calls the lieutenants and the guards, come and get this guy. And I was in the hole for 5 months, and I was happy in there.
And then when you say the hole, you mean just like solitary?
Yeah, solitary. You just, you got a cell. It's just a cell, and you're there, and you have a little rec area you can go to. But the guards that are running the whole if you're cool, they like you. And it's a lot better. You don't have to do the stupid stuff that you do on it was horrible, and the living quarters, bunk beds and people all around, and I was there for 5 months or something. And I got called in to the lieutenant there one day, and there was these anti-terrorist guys, and they're there and they're questioning me this. And I go, what are you guys here for? And they go, well, what do you know about Jim Nicholson? And that was the CIA agent. And I said, yeah, he was my cellie. What about him? Well, they didn't say why he's there. I said, well, what, he must have told you a lot of stuff. And I go, I don't know, not really. I mean, yeah, we talked. I mean, we good friends, whatever. Not good friends, but he was to find a cellie in prison. I mean, he was educated. I mean, he was a criminal. Don't get me wrong. He outed American citizens and everything, operatives and stuff.
But he went to college.
We could have conversations. He was calm. Everything was cool. And he worked all day, and that's when I was able to type. I had a typewriter in my cell, and I could write the book, and all kinds of things went on, and he would tell me things, but I didn't, to me, it didn't, there was nothing. I mean, I didn't, there was things I knew, but, I'm not going to sit here. And anyway, nothing happened. And
so even behind bars, he
was
continuing the espionage.
Killing the espionage by using his son to do this. Okay.
And then his son got jammed up.
And his son got jammed up because he was going to Cyprus, Argentina, and meeting the Russians in different places. Yeah. So I said, that motherfucker, I said, he used his son to do this. And even before that, I told him when I left Oregon, some years before, I said, don't write my daughter, because he wanted to keep in communication. See, he wanted me to help him. He had escape plans and everything for me to help him get out of prison.
Wow.
Because of my cosmetic disguise. Plus I had money, and I had a lawyer that I could send out information to without the prison seeing it. He couldn't send anything out without going through blackouts, and it would go to the FBI in Washington before it sent was sent to a sender, and they would either throw it away or black out anything that wouldn't be there. But he sent something to my daughter, and obviously they saw it. And so that's why they kept coming to me, that there's some connection with us.
Wow.
And that pissed me off. I just let it ride. But then when it came to, I saw his son, I said, fuck this. I said, so I went into the case manager and I said, let me call this guy, in Portland. They let me call him. And I said, yeah, I'll come out. I'll tell you all kinds of shit.
Wow.
I mean, escape plans, how he wanted to use this. And anyway, I got a couple years knocked off, but that was a beautiful experience in the prison. They went to a grand jury. I got flown to Portland from North Carolina to Portland twice.
Wow. And what was the guy's name again?
Harold Nicholson.
Could you pull him up? That's a wild story. I'd never heard that before.
He got an extra 8 years on top.
Wow.
Of 21. And then from there, from Sheridan, which was a chill place, he went to not Illinois, but Indiana, Terre Haute, Indiana, which is it's almost like Florence, Colorado.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That is wild.
Yeah. But anyway, I got a couple years and I went to the grand jury and this was what was really exciting, actually. For me, the first time I've ever been to a grand jury. So I got to back up. The federal prosecutor in Portland, who was a woman, and when I first arrived from North Carolina to the Portland, and they picked me up, the marshals picked me up and took me to the federal courthouse in Portland and come in and, there's the FBI agent, there's another local Portland policeman there and another person. And then the woman comes in. There he is. Yeah.
Wow. I'd never heard this story before. That is wild.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry, not to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So she comes in and she's just drop dead beautiful woman, man. I mean, she comes in a satin low cut thing, and here I am, 12 years in prison. Fuck this shit. And that's part of their game too. I mean, you get that. I mean, but I didn't know who I was dealing with till I got there. And she was very nice and everything. He says, can we get you anything? I said, yeah, well, give me I haven't had a cappuccino in years, and croissant, it would be great. And they went out and brought it. So I start telling them these stories and then everything. And then they said, okay, we got to have a grand jury. This information, they start, everything, all the different things. Because when I had my typewriter, it was an IBM word processor that I was allowed to have in my cell, which nobody else does because I was a clerk for the unit. So I did payroll for the unit managers. And I mean, to have that's another just happenstance. I mean, if I hadn't had that to write the book, I mean.
Yeah, it never would have happened.
I hand wrote and then typed, but it's just the same. It's not the same, And so, I get there and I come back out and I go to grand jury and here we are, and we go into this, and all the federal buildings are so much, they're beautiful. They're designed to captivate you. They're designed colors, shapes, forms, lighting. The lighting is very important. It's not too bright. It's not too dull. It's just perfect. Then you have these colors and a nice cushion. The grand jury, I think there's 12 people and they're in seats and there's kind of like a circular amphitheater. And I'm up there in my, orange bullshit. And here's this gorgeous woman comes in and everybody up there knew about Hollywood. Okay. So these poor people, Harry and Mary and Joe and, just normal citizens, GQ guys in Portland, they're getting called up on a CIA case. And that's like, oh, wow, this ought to be, who wouldn't want to go to, be chosen for a grand jury for that? And then I come in and she introduces me as the Hollywood bank robber. And then you can see the eyes like this because they all heard of us. So first of all, they're in with a CIA guy that's trying to get out of prison and then they got me. And then they start talking about, she starts asking me the questions. What do you want? I said, well, yeah. He had planned that a helicopter from San Francisco, Russian consulate, would come up and pick us up in Sheridan and pick us up in the yard, which was doable. And, it really was doable. I mean, in that prison setting, especially with the weather, the fog all the time and all that. And, I would have availability to do this. And, because I had this typewriter on the weekends when he wasn't working, he had his own typewriter cassette, and he would use the typewriter to do all of his clandestine stuff. I mean, I never asked him what he was,
Right.
But what I did notice is after his cassette was used up, he would take and unravel it and flush it down the toilet so that it'd never be found or confiscated.
Wow.
Instead of throwing it away, I didn't question it, but I look back now, I probably could have got out of prison back in the day all the way if I'd have wanted, but it wasn't in my mindset to, you know what I mean? I mean, enough things he told me about escaping and transferring information to the Russians through San Francisco and then to my brother who lived in Italy and be able to get that to them. Because I had a paralegal in San Francisco. I could easily put anything in there and send to them. They don't, legal mail, they don't
read, right?
His they would, but not mine. Yeah.
So he was trying to use you and use your daughter.
Well, it was only one letter, but that's why they, I think, ultimately came to me. And
but at that point, you're like, F this guy.
Yeah, fuck him. I just said, that became, and there was always something quirky about the guy. I mean, when you're in a 8x12 cell, and he was losing his hair and, he would sit in front of the mirror and kind of like
fix it,
combing the fucking hair. I go, what the you got? Just let it be. You feel, you know what I mean, after a while. But
do you chronicle a lot of the prison stuff in the book?
Only in the county jail, because I'm more concerned about the the county jail in the very beginning of the book. The book starts out on the shootout in the very end. So you don't know what it is. It's just this. And then little by little, you start seeing that it was a bank robbery. And we go through and it's through the debriefing with Sean after the plea bargain and everything while I'm in county jail doing the negotiating. It's in the plea bargain that you go into the bank robberies. So we go back in time.
Right.
And I tell Sean what question he's asking, whether I'm lying or not lying.
And now you and Sean are good friends.
Yeah. It was because of the Netflix. We were both disappointed with it. And this mutual friend that knew his wife, who was the investigator on our legal team, after I got out of prison, we had contacted each other once or something. And then she said, Sean wanted to, if you're willing, Sean would like to call you and ask you about the Netflix. I said, sure, and then he called me and I said, wow, he's in Virginia and I'm in Durham, North Carolina. I'm 2.5-hour drive up. I said, how would you like to have the original manuscript, which is 3 times the size of the book? Right. And he said, yeah. And he'd gotten the book already and read it and was astounded by a lot of the things that he didn't know. And then when he got the manuscript and his wife went through it and put it in plastic sleeves, and because I had it was all pretty still rough, from years of being used and transported. And
have you caught up with Mark?
Yeah, he's in Western Colorado, Montrose, Colorado. Yeah.
And you see him from time to time?
Yeah, I saw him out there. Yeah, I was out there visiting my brother. And oddly enough, my brother he and his wife have this large property in Montrose. Beautiful place, and he's about, as the crow flies, maybe 1/4 of a mile away from him, and they never knew this.
Wow.
And it's all there. He ends up there, and I was out there helping my brother build on his home, and I went and saw him, and we saw him. He's running. He's on this property that has a couple, 3 horses, and he takes care of the horses for the old lady. And
wow.
He's kind of like settled in, just the same as he was, but mellow. You know what I mean? Older and mellow, but he's not. I got out, I turned the light switch on and started business and started getting things going again. It's just, I can't,
And what happened to his wife?
They never married.
Or I guess his girlfriend at the time.
Oh,
you ever heard from her?
No, I don't have anything to do with it. I know she's got some kids and married somebody and was in New Orleans for a while. And I don't know. I think they're kind of friends. I think they talk. She's married and something. I don't know.
And do you ever think about Scott? How often do you think about it?
More now, the more I'm getting into it. I want to euthanize it. I just want to bring him out. I want to bring, there was a lot negative about him. Don't get me wrong. There was things that he had a weak part, but he carried a lot of stress, a lot of internal responsibility that he'd self-created. But as far as a human, a mensch, he was a real mensch with people. But he could be arrogant. He could fight. He would. Yeah. If somebody did something, he would get a fight. He would, but he was a great guy, and.
Did you love him?
Yeah, there was I don't know how to explain it. It's almost, because it was so metaphysical, the whole thing, we leaned on each other. He needed me like I needed him. We kind of used each other in a way, but not used each other maliciously, just we became dependent on each other in the my dependency was that I can't let him fall because once he falls, there was a certain point in the history that forensically it would have come back on me.
Mhm.
But, if knowing the law that I know now, it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, but then just thinking that if my name came up, life was over with. But now knowing how things work, it's not that critical. But
And everything that you've gone through, do you look back at that day in that Italian restaurant when he pitched you this idea? Do you regret it?
no, I just look at it. He ordered after we had one serving of tiramisu together because he loved it, because this was a Tuscan restaurant and Johnny was his name. And after we had one serving of tiramisu, he asked the waitress, and she said, do you have any more tiramisu? And she goes, yeah, there's half of the pan. She said, bring the whole thing out. And we're sitting there eating the rest of the whole plate of tiramisu and drinking wine. I mean, this is who he was. We would go into an Italian bar in Chicago. He loved Chicago because it was just party time for him. And we'd go in there, and he was a drinker, man. He's my size, but that guy could drink more than Mark. And he loved grappa. And we went in there, and there was this exotic back bar, and they had like 15 bottles of grappa. And he said, I want to taste at least 10 of those, the best ones you had. And, each grappa taste, and those exotic grappas are 10, 15 bucks a piece or whatever, they're a lot, even back then. And he'd have these shots of grappa, and that guy would drink every one of those things.
Wow.
God almighty. I mean, he was drunk, but he could handle it. You know what I mean?
But you don't regret it?
No, I can't regret it. I don't look back. If somebody said, if you could change it all, would you? And I go, no, not even the prison. I don't know. It changed my life. I respect more now than I did before that. I respect more the human simplicity in a way, even though I'm not fully part of the human organism in the same way that I would have been before. But I mean, I look at life so much freer in a way, sort of. I mean, I'm involved in the routine of what everybody has. You have to make money, you do this, you have responsibilities. I mean, it's all there, but it's like an old collage.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there. You do it, and it's not who I am. It's not. The success is not important to me, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't not want to. It's not like I'm looking for success, but I'm not looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a thing. That's just one of the.
You're more focused on doing.
Yeah,
not
I just work. That's all I do is work. I work, and going to restaurants and all of that stuff. I've done it so much that I go in there and it's just anticlimactical. The food is not even. I mean, it's just I've tasted better. Done. It's just. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not the same as it used to be. And I mean, especially with him or with girlfriends, and you go in and you party and you have good times. I mean, with my girlfriend that flew for United, we were at the Treehouse. And I mean, when she met Scot and saw the Treehouse, it was like this, oh my God. I mean, she comes from Europe. She escaped the war, she was Croatian, escaped the Serbian-Croatian war and got to America and became successful, I mean, she did everything properly. Became a flight attendant. She was a flight attendant already in Croatia for their airline there. But the point is that, and then she comes to this Treehouse, and Scot, who was this crazy guy. The first time she met him, we were watching Evander Holyfield and Tyson fight when he bit the ear off. And we're there in the front house, and we're there, and we got, wine and champagne and whiskey, and we're going, and Scott's going, we're screaming and yelling, and, at the fight. And she sees this Treehouse, and I take her the next day up to the Mount Rainier, up to the Paradise, and it's just this magical. I mean, the Treehouse was this womb of beauty, of it was symbolic of something that doesn't exist in life anymore. Yeah. And you became secure, and to feel this. And when she see Scot in the Treehouse and how he lived, and he had this money, but he dressed like a vagabond. He drove around an old van,
Yeah.
He shared what he had. His house was not exuberant. He didn't buy designer furniture. Unlike me, when I get it, I design everything. You know what I mean? I like that kind of ambient. But him is like always in a log cabin. You just go and you put the feet up on the sofa and you just live. You know what I mean? And that's the way he was.
Any more nightmares?
No.
Do you feel like you're still being tested by that metaphysical force?
I think I always will from the day I die, even before bank robbery. I just, life was always something extraordinary. Things happened to me that should never happen. Kinds of people I've met throughout the world, teachers, philosophers, artists, all kinds of different artists from different parts of the world, that I had the opportunity. I put myself in those opportune situations, but still to be able to have it and appreciate it. I have Russian friends, Israeli friends, Brazilian. I was married to a Brazilian wife, and we were married for some number of years, whom I met in Italy. She was a sculptress as well. And, just different, all of the things, everything unfolded. I don't know. Did you ever read Hermann Hesse? He's probably not, he's a German writer, and I read all of his books back in the day, and it was, Hermann Hesse was one of his things, and Siddhartha, which is his more metaphysical one, you know what I mean? But that's what I felt like. I felt like a wanderer back then, and things just unfolded as I went. And whatever I did, I always gave. I always would build studios. I never asked. I can't imagine carrying an American flag around and going down and trying to get some welfare somewhere. It doesn't even, people would laugh at you.
I'm curious, in that time of your life, and I'm not asking this as a pejorative, but more as almost like a clinical question. Do you feel like you or Scott were psychopaths?
Psychopath in which way?
Like maybe like having some type of clinical disposition where anxiety didn't affect you, or the things that would scare 99% of the population didn't scare you.
No, they scared us. I was always on edge. Any operation we would drive, the drive up to Seattle to do a robbery was a very edgy, clinical, I understood the fear. I realized the fear. He did as well. He was never fearless of anything like that. I don't know what kind of backbone the man had or what drove him. There was something very different in him, but was he psychopath? No. He had faults. I had faults.
Sure.
We're all vulnerable, but I cared about people. He cared about people.
But the level of risk you were willing to take, you don't feel like it reached a diagnostic level.
It may have been. I'm sure a doctor would set us down and say, "You're crazy, you're stark or even mad." Yeah. I look back at it now, I go, do I think it's crazy? Do I think a soldier going and convincing himself that the war in Vietnam is justified to die for because of some politicians that told you that this is, and it all ends up what it would have, it all ended up as a communist country in the end. Do you see what I'm saying? I had many friends. I didn't go to Vietnam, but that was my era, and it was a struggle, psychological struggle, and I had friends who were there. And there's no upside to Vietnam. And you see the heroes, or you see, nurses and all kinds of great people, but it's sad to think that you sacrifice or you risk your life for these politicians who don't do it, who have, it's criminal what they do. Now, at least I always said, if I'm going to fight a war, I'm going to fight my war.
Right.
That's what I said. And this was what, for me, was my war. And if it was an indirect way of expressing the political dislike I had of much of the system, I don't mean all of it. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not like an anarchist or anything like that. Systems have to exist, but when you have the vulgarity and the extremity of the politicians, especially today, even more than back then, it's unconscionable, and nothing goes on. It's
right.
just a merry-go-round. And I used to call Clinton's regime the B-rated film. His was a B-rated film is what he was.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then that was minor. He was minor compared to what's going on today. So, yeah, to me, am I a psych? I guess clinically somebody could maybe analyze that I was, I remember when we were going through the custody thing, and the guardian ad litem said that, would you, had my daughter go to an analyst, not a psychiatrist, but I guess a psychiatrist, but an analyst, for court, whatever. And, we would do it together, and then she would do it alone, and then I would do it alone. And at one point when I was alone, she said, well, would you ever consider, do you think it would be beneficial if we you had more private sessions with me. And I said, well, yeah, as long as we fly to Paris, I'll talk all day in a cafe. You think I'm going to come in here and talk my woes? Yeah, I'm miserable. What do you want me to say? Yeah. I mean, let's go and let's talk all day in a cafe or in Rome or in Paris and we'll have fun. Yeah. I mean, I see all this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can talk all day, but
Well, Stephen, I had a fantastic time. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And if people want to learn more or get maybe the full picture, where can they find the book?
Amazon, The Treehouse, The True Story of Hollywood the Bank Robber, because that's the full title with my name. It's on Amazon, and it's also on Barnes & Noble. You can get it. And they also have audiobook in both of them now, too.
Here's the book right here if anyone's looking to check it out.
So you can get audiobook now that's just been released. And that's, if you want to, it's AI generating my voice, but it's reading the whole book. And
well, thank you
so
much.
There we are. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you,
It really
brother.
has
Really
been.
appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Let's do it again soon.
Hey, we have a brand new channel that is a part of the Camp universe, and we made it specifically with you in mind. And I personally think that you're really going to like it. So check it out.